No. Yeah, I know we're smart, but we're not that smart.
No, I glanced it, but
This is the first I've even heard of it. I wonder, has it been discussed in a subcommittee meeting at all?
um, isn't this the contract for advisory service for to go out for to find our bond rating? That's what it's for. To go to see how good we are with a bond rating.
Yeah, but we should have had it before today.
I think it was in subcommittee, if I'm not mistaken.
In whose subcommittee?
Hey Brett, wasn't this bar in your subcommittee? This is in your subcommittee. Yeah, yeah.
Are we good to begin? Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting of your Pontiac City Council is hereby called to order at 6:05 p.m. We give the floor to Councilman Parker to introduce this evening's invocation.
Good evening, everyone, and good afternoon. Good evening, President McGinnis. I introduce to you Pastor Chris Johnson of All Saints Church. He's going to give us our invocation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Let us pray. Holy God, in your word, you have given us a vision of that holy city to which the nations of the world bring their glory. Behold and visit, we pray, Pontiac and all the cities of the earth. Renew the ties of mutual regard which form our civic life. Send us honest and able leaders. Enable us to eliminate poverty, prejudice, and oppression, that peace may prevail with righteousness and justice with order, and that men and women from different cultures and with differing talents may find with one another the fulfillment of their humanity. Bestow upon those who hold office in this city the spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice, that with steadfast purpose they may faithfully serve in their offices to promote the well-being of all people. Continue to set before us tasks which demand our best efforts and lead us to accomplishments which satisfy and delight us. Comfort and relieve those challenged by serious and chronic mental and emotional illnesses. As winter draws close, help us to provide for those who seek a safe, warm place to call home, a place where personal dignity and self-respect may prevail. And finally, we pray, O God, the Father of all, whose Son commanded us to love our enemies. Lead them and us from prejudice to truth. Deliver them and us from hatred, cruelty, and revenge. And in your good time, enable us all to stand reconciled before you through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
All right, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We come to our beginning of our meeting where we have a moment of silence as a community. In recent days, our city and our nation celebrated and honored Veterans Day. And it is a day of reverence and remembrance for those who have served our nation through the various branches of our armed forces. We do have an update to the displays in our city council chambers honoring Pontiac's military veterans. Some of those spotlighted included the Tuskegee Airmen of World War II, but also Joseph Clovis, who was the oldest living African-American Union veteran of the American Civil War, and he was from right here in Pontiac, Michigan, until his passing in 1951. Lived to be, I believe, 105 years old. And we also have General Israel B. Richardson, a Union general from the American Civil War, a Pontiac resident as well. He was a Union general, killed in the Battle of Antietam. He is buried in Pontiac's Oak Hill Cemetery with a very substantial headstone to celebrate his military accomplishments and his service to the United States. And Richardson Park, located in District 7 at Mechanic and Paddock, and M59 is named in his honor as well. Let's have a moment of silence remembering those who have served our nation's military. Thank you. Roll call of council members. Mr. Starks.
Carrington.
Present.
Goodman.
Here.
James.
Here.
McGinnis.
Present.
Nicholson.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Rutherford. You have a quorum.
Quorum being established. Thank you very much, council members, for your time this evening. Could I please have a motion to excuse Councilman Rutherford for personal reasons?
Moved by Carrington.
Moved by Pro Tem Carrington, seconded by Councilman Nicholson, that Councilman Rutherford be excused from this evening's meeting for personal reasons. Hearing no further discussion. Roll call. Deputy Clerk.
Carrington.
Yes.
Goodman.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. Councilman Rutherford is hereby excused. Is there a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
Moved by Carrington.
Moved by Pro Tem Carrington, seconded by Councilman Nicholson. That motion is now before us. I believe a few potential amendments may be considered. Does any council member have a motion to amend? Councilman Parker?
I would suggest we move our subcommittee reports to the next week.
Okay. There's a request to move it 1 week.
Support.
It's been moved by Parker, seconded by Nicholson, that the agenda be amended to have subcommittee reports be the following week.
Okay.
Any further discussion on that motion to amend? Hearing nothing further, roll call on that amendment. Deputy Clerk.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Carrington.
Yes.
Goodman.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
That amendment carries. It's now in the agenda before us as amended. We do have a resolution, the current number 12, commending state supplemental funding for Pontiac schools. I was waiting to finish drafting that until the governor had signed it, and I don't believe that's happened yet, so could I have a motion to postpone for 1 week?
Support.
It's been moved by Councilman Nicholson, seconded by Councilman Parker. Hearing no further discussion, roll call on that motion to postpone for, or to remove it from the agenda, postpone for 1 week. Clerk, Deputy Clerk.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Carrington.
Yes.
Goodman.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
All right, the agenda before us for consideration reflects that change. Are there any other amendments? Hearing no further amendments or discussion, speakers list having been exhausted, roll call and adoption of the agenda as amended. Clerk, Mr. Deputy Clerk.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Carrington.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. The agenda as amended is adopted. We'll proceed accordingly. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Moved by Carrington.
Support.
It's been moved by Pro Tem Carrington, seconded by Councilman Parker, on that we approve this evening's consent agenda. It has 2 items this week. Last week's regular city council meeting of minutes of November 7th, and then the November 6th Economic Development, Housing, and Planning Subcommittee minutes of the Pontiac City Council. Roll call on approval of the consent agenda. Deputy Clerk.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Carrington.
Yes.
Goodman.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. The consent agenda is adopted. It was moved by the City Council that subcommittee reports will happen next week, so we now move to recognition of elected officials. This is an opportunity, if there's any current elected officials serving the City of Pontiac that wish to have the floor, now is the time. Share with us updates about their respective city positions. You'll want to turn the microphone on, the button to the right on the black device.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to bring something to the city's attention, but I need to play a brief, and this is district related because I serve on the Board of Education and am also a community member. So just bear with me I just want to play a brief snippet of something before I continue with my statement, if you all don't mind. Okay, I hope that you will be able to hear this. Okay, so that was a council meeting from our former council and my former supervisor. So while I was an employee for the city of Pontiac, I also was and still am a board member. Here within City Hall, as I stated once before, that I was assaulted by Deirdre Waterman. Under Tim Grimal's administration, I was terminated. So I filed a complaint with the EEOC, and I have now obtained my right to sue the city of Pontiac. I am asking that we have a conversation so that we can come to a resolution together for my treatment as an elected official.
How does it tie in? This is recognition of elected officials. How does it tie into your service?
Because while I was an elected official, I was assaulted doing work as an elected official. I was here in City Hall assaulted as an elected official. So this is speaking to that because I'm making it clear to the community that we have an opportunity to have a discussion while I am an elected official and still a community member to come to some resolution so that we can move forward. So
I don't believe that this falls under our rules and procedures for recognition of elected officials.
I am on the list for public comment later, but I just want you all to know that I hope that we can have a conversation and moving forward so that the city and community won't be impacted by us not having a conversation. So I hope you all have a good evening, and thank you so very much.
You are entitled to your public comment, but for other recognition of elected officials, are there any other requests to speak and provide updates in their capacity of their elected positions? Okay, hearing none, we are now at agenda address. Are there any requests this evening, Pro Tem Carrington?
Okay, I'm sorry. Carlton Jones.
All right. Good evening. I wanted to say first and foremost, I know it's a very challenging thing to be able to come up as a community person, speak from a lot of different perspectives. But one of the things I want to talk about that's on the agenda is the amendment to the zoning, which is number 8. I want to say that we need to take a good hard look at that because we're looking at trying to redo our master plan. And I think our master plan addressed why we had different residential areas the way they were. And I think there is a big need for housing right now, but we got to be very careful in how we adjust from a minimum of 1,200 square feet to allowing a minimum of 700 square feet. That's almost cutting it in half. How that will impact communities, and I'm going to say this because I truly believe that we need to be very conscious. At the end of the day, we could be creating some transit communities. 700 square foot is not a family type of environment. If we want to promote a better school system where families come in here and want to send their kids to our school system, we need to be very conscious of what we do in the neighborhoods. Anybody who know about how our neighborhoods was built before, they were built with neighborhood schools. Now, I know we no longer have that, but people invested into those neighborhoods, and right now, we have more people sending their kids outside our school district opposed to staying in our school district. Do realize how the homes are built reflect whether you're getting families to live in these homes. So I do know that there's a need for some different changing, but I think we need to look at that from a master plan perspective, because a master plan will tell you how to separate the different types, and infill is not the answer. If we want to make some reduction, we should have a area that all the reduced homes are in that area together. So I just recommend we take a good hard look at that before we just go and start reducing the square footage of homes, or square footage, the minimum square footage for a home in those existing 1,200 square foot areas. And one other item is on number 9. I want you to be very conscious that we should promote community benefits, first and foremost, anything in the marijuana industry. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Waterman.
Good evening. I wanted to address number 13, I believe is on the agenda, and that is where you are going to retain or re-retain a financial advisors, the Baird Company, as well as acknowledging the fact that we do have, since I was in mayor, Miller Canfield Law Firm, which was our bond counsel. And I'm glad to see this is happening. You know, we work at the financial stability of the city, which was one of the things I call the 10 legacy projects. As we talked about things that we were able to accomplish, was to get the city from financial crisis, nearly bankruptcy after the emergency manager crisis was brought in, to the fact where we were able to restore the financial solvency of the city. Not only that, but to increase the credit rating. And that was when I did bring in Baird, who you're bringing back again, because they were able to tell us that because of the fact that we had cleared the city of almost all its debt, and also were able to solve the 2 major liability lawsuits that had been brought by the emergency manager, that this had restored the credit rating of the city. So at that time, as we were considering what the credit rating was, they told us we had gone from a very low C or D to much higher than what we were, almost an A double minus, which was great. So I see you're bringing them back because once you have, city has financial solvency, that you're able to do things to get credit rating, to do such things as get bonds for repair of roads. We have about $200 million left money that's needed to repair our roads in the city, or even to build the youth center, which as yet we don't know the cost of. But when we did the estimate for Galloway Park, the former council asked me to do, it would be $20 million to get a state-of-the-art youth center. So I just wanted to mention that as the rest of the story.
Thank you, Ms. Waterman. Mr. Chuck Johnson is not present. Ms. Darlene Clark. And can you let us know what items on the agenda? Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council Administration. My name is Darlene Clark, speaking as a resident concerning dwellings for single-family homes. Council, please take into consideration that I understand that the mayor wants you to occupy the lots that's available. But occupying those lots that's available does not constitute you to put smaller homes on the property. The property actually, I've been here 70 years, so the property actually started out from 900 square feet to as well as 1,250. It's been some of the smaller ones and larger. But it put a family, a single mother, in a 700 square foot is not even unconstitutional to the child. It's actually stunting the growth of the society. It's showing society this is not a stepping stone. This is not a temporary spot, because when you pay that mortgage, you pay the same thing as you would in an apartment. But only difference between an apartment, the homeowner becomes responsibility for that home. Putting 700 square foot home, you thinking that maybe one person will buy it, you open up the doors for more investors to come in here, buy these little homes, and bring them out again. And once again, we have well over amount of 60 to 65% renters. This is not what City of Pontiac need. I know you're trying to look out for our interests, but please look beyond whatever form that you're looking at. Look over that horizon. And I'm saying that and try to put it very nicely. Putting 700 square feet, no disrespect to any culture, any race, or anyone, it's almost putting you back into slavery and putting little houses on a piece of land. Please think twice before you do it.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Ms. Gloria Miller. She's not present. That concludes our agenda address for today.
All right, thank you very much, Pro Tem, and thank you, residents, for attending this evening's meeting. We're at what had been number 8. Is there a motion to approve adoption of an ordinance to amend the City of Pontiac zoning ordinance to allow 2-family dwellings, smaller 1-family dwellings, in designated residential infill overlay districts?
To discuss this? Yes, I make a motion.
Is there a second?
Support.
It's been moved by Councilman James, seconded by Councilman Goodman, and we give the floor to the administration and the planning division. We had the first reading of this approximately 3 weeks ago at a previous city council meeting. It's been discussed multiple months at our subcommittee, as well as at respective district meetings, since this is targeted at certain proposed neighborhoods. So with that, Mayor Grunwald.
Yeah, thank you, President McGinnis. I will turn it over to our planning manager, Mark Yandrick, but before I do so, I just want to provide a little bit of context for where this proposal came from. We do, in fact, have a lot of existing houses in the city that are smaller than the current minimum requirement of 1,200 square feet. Historically, there were a lot of houses built that were smaller than that. Many of those are still in existence. And we are sensitive to the fact that home ownership remains elusive for many because of how unaffordable it is, especially now. And of course, one approach, among others, to try to make home ownership more accessible is to allow smaller homes to be built where appropriate. And that is really where the genesis of this idea came from. So I know our planning manager will get into all of the details. This was vetted by the Planning Commission, which did recommend approval. And this is really targeted at 3 specific neighborhoods in the city. And so with that, Planning Manager Andrew, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Good evening, public. So this is a presentation just to explain during the second reading give me just a moment here, what is being proposed in the text amendment. So this is a citywide text amendment to establish 3 overlay districts. It is city initiated, and it creates regulations for a new residential infill overlay district. This is the process. It went through Planning Commission informational session and public hearing in September and October. This was presented at the district meetings for District 1 and 7 in the month of September to just give more information to residents of those council districts about this proposal. This went for first reading on October 24th, and tonight is for second reading. At the request of Councilmember Rutherford, I have been able to speak to Mr. Robert Bass after the first reading, and then we had a follow-up meeting a week later just to review the ordinance as requested. So just a background from the existing master plan. The city will be going forward with another master plan hopefully soon, but under the 2014 master plan, one of the future land use goals is to improve existing neighborhoods. And it says that a city is comprised of and defined by its neighborhoods. Strengthening the existing neighborhoods through blight removal, demolition, reinvestment, and business support will improve the image of the city and, more importantly, the quality of life of all Pontiac residents. Furthermore, in the subsection of residential development, it states the existing zoning ordinance should be amended to provide greater flexibility for building type and land uses within these districts. These standards should emphasize building form and outline acceptable materials and standards for each district. So that really sets the tone for staff's motivation in working through the creation of this ordinance. So, as the mayor mentioned, the city has been approached by a developer who has an option to purchase and build on county-owned properties in 2 of the 3 proposed districts. The city has reviewed the concept and is proposing these 3 areas of an optional overlay district where a property owner of a one-family zoning district property could do any one of the following on each buildable parcel. 1 is to build a smaller single-family dwelling unit with higher architectural standards, and number 2 is to build a 2-family dwelling unit with higher architectural standards. Staff did propose to Planning Commission the ability to construct accessory dwelling units, also known as granny flats or mother-in-law suites, on the property, but Planning Commission chose to separate this out of the ordinance and review it further, so that is not before City Council tonight. I do want to just remind everyone, this is an optional overlay district. So this is something that a property owner can still follow the current regulations. The optional thing is if you would propose to build something less than 1,200 square feet, you would be allowed to if this were passed, but you would have to follow those architectural standards as the trade-off. So it's not a requirement for anyone that's living or owns property in these districts. So let's identify just the 3 districts. Number 1 is the area just east of City Hall. It really is between Auburn, MLK, 59 and University to the north, and Union Street and MLK to the west. So this area really is where the single-family residential zones are. If you're seeing some of the other colors that are not included, that's because they have a different base zoning district. Number 2 is on the bottom left. It is between Bagley, South Boulevard, Franklin Street, and Rapid Street. This is just west of the M1 concourse. And Area 3 is northeast of the railroad tracks, really between Woodward and Osmond and MLK, and then South Boulevard as well. So one of the reasons is, why did staff select these 3 areas? So beyond just the developer's interests, really the proximity to downtown and Woodward Avenue was very similar. And there's a large cluster of vacant lots. Not all, but many are owned by the city or county. The average household income is 10 to 30% below the city of Pontiac average. And then also, this is the average residential property value is 10 to 30% below the Pontiac average. And this comes from the 2020 census. And so this is a very strategic area that needs some population, needs some reinvestment in it to stabilize this neighborhood. So proposed area 1 is in the upper left. There are 145 vacant, that should say properties, or vacant homes that could be built in that area, which is a large number considering how big or how small that is. And then, I am showing the metrics just for household income and property value. Proposed area 2 is a little smaller in terms of the number of blocks that it contains, but it still has 97 vacant lots that a home could be built on. And then proposed area 3 has approximately 140 vacant homes. So there's definitely more of a need in these 3 neighborhoods than there would be in others in the city. So this is the metrics behind that request for that. The ordinance itself defines some architectural features. I'm just showing these 2 just because they may not be terms that people are familiar with. A building step back is an architectural design element that is typically applied to an upper story of a development. It requires any portion of the building above the ground floor to be further recessed from the ground floor facade. Modulation is an inset or projection of sections of a structure's facade with specified intervals of building width and depth as a means of breaking up the structure's apparent bulk. So these are just items that a potential developer could utilize to fulfill the requirement for architectural details. The current proposed minimum citywide is 1,200 square feet. That has been placed for many years, but as the mayor mentioned, there are many homes that are 800, 900, 1,000 square feet, depending on the regulations of the time that it was built. If this is adopted, the proposed regulation would allow 700 square feet, again, if you have those higher architectural standards. And this outlines the orientation of the home, whether it be side by side, front to back, or one unit stacked on top of each other, and if it's on interior or corner lots, that how they could be placed. Again, this improves the neighborhood. This improves the facade of the neighborhood. It creates a neighborhood feel, having some of these homes and creating an identity for the neighborhood, not just having vacant lots. The primary entrances for all 2-family structures should be clearly defined with a projecting or recessed entrance, or a stoop or enclosed or covered porch, provided that a porch shall comply with the required setbacks. It may have a transom or side light window panel framing the door opening. A transom is the window, above the door you often see that lets light into the foyer area, or an architectural trim framing that door opening. And again, 2-family dwellings would be allowed on individual lots with a single-family residential zoning district, where typically it would only allow 1 dwelling. Again, some of the requirements are to maintain and reflect the traditional character. And so it shall include, the architectural design shall include facade modulation, entry features that are dominant elements facing the street, and the utilization of a variety of high-quality materials that are either new to the neighborhood or complement the surrounding neighborhood. One of the things that we discuss, and I have an upcoming slide, has to do with the building material and the use of vinyl. In addition to the 3 required elements at the top, applicants should choose 2 of the 4 design elements from the following list: architectural articulations in the walls and roofs, a covered entry porch, a second-story step-back or modulation, or a large area of windows used as architectural features compared to other structures in the neighborhood on the front and side facades of the principal structure. So staff was reviewing vinyl as an option as we were going through this process. And vinyl is definitely an affordable material to build for houses. There are many homes that have vinyl in this community. One of the challenges with vinyl is sometimes it gets warped by the sun and elements and can, deteriorate a little quicker than other natural materials like a stone or brick. And so we did put in here brick and stone are encouraged. And vinyl, Planning Commission amended the proposal to permit up to 70% of the building facade to have vinyl. However, instead of being the base level vinyl, it would be required to have a 0.5 millimeter thickness, which is a higher quality vinyl material and would definitely, even from the street, look stronger than some of the thinner vinyl, which can look a little flimsy. So this is a concept layout provided by one of the potential developers, and this is showing the garage is on the first floor. Garage area does not count towards the total floor area of a dwelling unit. And then the second floor is the living quarters, and this introduces a porch and some entry features that could be utilized on the site. So the developer also proposed, or actually shared, excuse me, some of their existing homes where they've built in neighborhoods. And this is an example in Hazel Park. There's a few additional photos within the staff report, just showing the correlation that there are design elements that it may integrate, that the average person going by may not realize the differences between the buildings in floor size. So just as a summary, these are city-initiated zoning text amendments for the residential infill overlay district, and it really constitutes a neighborhood strategy. In staff's assessment, this strategy is focused on the needs of these neighborhoods, as other areas of the city may need different strategies in the future. This ordinance is being designed for anyone to build, not specifically for one developer. And since this has been proposed, we've had interest from several other developers in this part of this city. And there will be some contrasting architectural styles within this proposal, but the long-term goals of this strategy are, one, to create placemaking with enhanced architectural requirements in these neighborhoods, and two, to attempt to stabilize and elevate existing neighborhood property values from dropping home values caused by blight. Now, if I may add, one of the things of why is this also being proposed is that our minimum is 1,200 square feet, and we have a lot of vacant properties, but there's not a lot of demand for the building of 1,200 square foot homes at the moment. You know, part of that's supply, cost, labor, things of that nature. We've had 37 residential building permits in the last year. The grand majority of those come from Century Homes in their work of vacant parcels in Stonegate, in Fieldstone, and other locations. Now, those are completely separate regulations that would not follow these standards here, but staff is looking at alternatives that would provide incentives, again, to help stabilize these neighborhoods and prevent any future declines. So with that, Planning Commission at their public hearing recommended approval 5-1 of the zoning text and map amendment for the residential infill overlay district with two conditions. Number one, the proposed vinyl thickness shall be a minimum of 0.5 millimeters from the 0.46 requirement that staff proposed. And number two, no more than 70% of the exterior facade may utilize vinyl. Both of those conditions have been incorporated in this ordinance tonight that you heard at first reading and second reading. And then, as I mentioned earlier, while staff introduced a proposal to allow accessory dwelling units, Planning Commission voted 6-0 to separate it from the proposed ordinance and table it for further discussion. So that is my presentation. Thank you very much. I'd be happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you. And it might be valuable if you want to go to the slide that has the map that shows the three proposed areas in question. Discussion on the motion before us. Councilman Parker.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, Brother President. I believe I heard you say that even without this change, the builder can build a house pretty much this size anyway.
So under the current regulations,
Microphone.
Under the current regulations, they'd be required to build 1,200 square feet. So this would allow a smaller architectural size at 700.
Does it limit how high it can go?
The regulations would not change how high it can go. It would have to follow the residential 35 feet, which is standard through all residential districts in the city.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilwoman James, followed by Pro Tem Carrington.
What was the feedback from District 1 and District 7 when you met with them on this?
The individuals that during the presentations, I didn't have a lot of feedback, but a lot of individuals I spoke with, really, I think there was an interest in it. I think it was also curiosity. There were people that were of retirement age and they wanted to downsize and were very interested in it. There were others that wanted to know how the city could help them, possibly build, maybe they own some potential lots. When I had met with Mr. Bass, we had discussed and really he reviewed it for a little while. I think that there were some unknowns because this is a new concept, but he gave his support to me. So
I can offer feedback because we brought it up now at 3 different District 7 district meetings. Manager Yandrick presented in September and there was discussion, but I've brought it back the last 2 months. At last night's District 7 meeting, we spent a good amount of time reviewing it, discussing the pros and cons, and I did ask the question, how would residents be interested in seeing this happen. How do they want me to vote? And there was about 55 people there, and it was entirely in support. I'm sure there were a few people that actually didn't weigh in, and there were questions, of course, but very strong resonated support from District 7 at least, and 2 of the 3 districts fall within our district boundaries.
Okay, my next question is, this is kind of based around higher architectural standards, which will make these buildings more expensive and probably more advantageous for developers rather than individual investors. But will individual investors be able to participate in this? For instance, a resident who owns multiple lots throughout the city, would they be able to participate in this as well?
Absolutely. As long as they have a property that is at least 40 foot wide and is a buildable lot, they would be able to build.
If located in one of these districts.
Correct. Thank you. Yeah.
But they would have to follow these architectural guidelines that you have
Yep.
for these houses. Okay. Okay, that's it.
Pro Tem Carrington?
Yes, thank you, President McGinnis. I'm looking at your summary or your overview, and you stated that the city was approached by a developer who had an option to purchase or build on county-owned properties in 2 or 3 proposed districts. It's because you didn't never mention that particular developer. So is this something that there's something that the council, we can't have this information? I'm trying to understand it just a little bit.
Yeah, and I know the individual. I do not know the company, and I've had one discussion with him. For me, I'm not looking at it just from this perspective of this developer.
Because I'm assuming that this particular developer has already been more or less stated that he may be able to purchase these city lots already. So how would other developers get the opportunity?
So if I could differentiate, these are county-owned lots, so this is really a relationship that this individual or this developer has with the county, and there really has been no city involvement with acquiring these properties. Now that the city's disposition policy has been approved by City Council, someone that wants to acquire a property could contact Deborah Younger, our Economic Development Manager, to look into acquire it as long as it follows the guidelines that are there.
I do want to follow up on that question because
Sure.
it's important for us to consider that as we're reviewing city-owned properties, we now have a policy for considering sale of city-owned properties. It would be helpful to know if this passes, what are those clusters of city-owned properties? Because it just might be another level of consideration for us as we're doing that. Because I think the point is well made. Part of why there are 600 and 700 and 800 square feet homes on the east side of Pontiac already, and in northern Pontiac and in central Pontiac, is that it was families building their own homes. Their family's home, working at General Motors, working other working class jobs, and they were able to literally put a roof over their own heads because the building and zoning standards provided for it. Right now they do not. And so we want to get a sense of, it's not just we want to handle dozens of parcels, which could be great, but we also want to see individual parcels coming back online, being useful to the neighborhood, and helping heal the pockmarked streets, in this instance on the east side, that I'm particularly paying attention to, because I think that that's a great value, that's of great benefit. It's making it more accessible for more families, whether they need somebody to build it for them or partner with them, or that they're hiring a contractor. But some Pontiac families, they have that skill set or access to that skill set within their family and extended units. Yes. I'm sorry, Pro Tem, did you have any follow-ups?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Councilwoman James, Councilman Parker?
Yeah, that you bring up a good point. And where does these 3 areas, if we approve this new program, this planning adjustment for these 3 areas, where's that going to leave the citywide program for the lots that are available for purchase in the city?
Yeah. I think as we're progressing with accomplishing things at a staff level, working with city council to get things accomplished, we're going to be discussing, I think, citywide with the housing plan and the master plan overall, but really we would follow the disposition policy, and I think the first round are for lots that people own the adjacent property. So they're going to be given priority up front with the rules and regulations that are in place from that disposition policy. But I think as we start going forward, there will be multiple rounds of this. I think we'll have an ability to maybe revise and rethink that disposition policy with City Council to as we're looking at other areas of the city. But right now, this proposal is just for these 3 areas. And while there are city-owned properties within these 3, I know in Area 1 and Area 3, it is predominantly county-owned properties. I just wanted to share that there is a disproportion. It's not like it's 50-50 city-owned properties and county-owned properties. There's a majority of these are county-owned.
Councilman Parker. Anything? Oh, I'm sorry. Follow up.
After. I can go after you.
Councilman Parker.
Was there a cost study done between the 1,200 square feet house and the 750 square feet house? Because you mentioned these standards are higher on the lower housing than it is on the larger houses.
Things are changing so much. We didn't do a cost analysis per se, but in working with the Carlisle Workman firm to come up with this ordinance, we did see that the architectural standards were about 10 to 15% more than what they would typically be under our current regulations for design. But that's the trade-off for having a smaller footprint where you may not have as much labor and supplies with the smaller footprint.
Follow up. Is these properties being built as rentals or purchase?
I mentioned this at first reading. The one that was approached by the county is for more rentals, but we have had interest and meetings with some others that are interested in ownership, owner-occupied development. So,
Councilwoman James?
Yeah, when is the lot sales going to kick off for Pontiac residents?
Absolutely. Well, we've already had one round. I don't know the exact date, but I believe in a couple weeks, Deborah Younger's queuing up round 2. So,
What we've had so far is a public hearing
Yep.
for approximately 21 parcels. That has not ultimately come for a vote, so we still have yet to consummate any sale of city-owned properties.
Yeah.
thank you for the clarification.
I think basically this is a good program. I've done some research on it. Generally, they are considered good proposals, and they can be and have proven to be beneficial in urban communities, which is what Pontiac is. So, but we have been talking about these lots since we took office. And, all of the work has been done to determine what lots are available. We have made decisions about that we are going to allow these people who live next door to be able to get first opportunity to purchase these lots. I'm concerned, though, that in jumping ahead and now approving a whole new program, that this could possibly prevent residents from being able to purchase land, because what's going to happen is obviously your developers are going to be very interested in in not only these lots but lots throughout Pontiac. And I don't think we as a city have given our residents the opportunity that we said we would give them. So I really need to understand how these things are going to tie in together, because I would hate to see us approve this and that has an influence, a negative influence on our residents' ability to purchase lots next to them, or just to be able to purchase lots, to be able to move ahead in life.
Mayor Brown?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a really important question that you're raising, Councilwoman James, and I would frame that question this way. The policy that City Council has approved to ensure that residents can acquire neighboring lots at an affordable discounted rate applies to city-owned lots, and it applies to all city-owned lots.
Yes.
This policy would not change that. It would simply determine what size homes could be based or built on those lots. So there's nothing about what is being proposed here that changes the priority or the preference or the right of first refusal, if you will, that would be offered to neighbors for city-owned lots. This would determine both that there's greater flexibility in terms of what size of houses could be built on those lots if they were acquired by neighboring owner-occupied homeowners. And it would also apply, obviously, not just to city-owned lots, this proposal before you, but would apply to city-owned lots, county-owned lots, and privately owned lots as well. But there's nothing about what is being proposed that would supersede or circumvent or undermine the right of first refusal that the city has put in place for city-owned lots, whereby the first right to acquire those lots would be offered to residents who live in owner-occupied housing adjacent to a city-owned lot.
Okay, I know we agreed about the residents who live next to city-owned lots. But what about the rest of the lots? Would Pontiac residents have a first shot at those? Because we had talked about this, but I don't think we ever really came to a conclusion about the rest of the lots. We did make a decision about, if you live next door, you have the first right, right of refusal. But what about the rest of the lots? Are we going to give Pontiac residents, so to speak, a first shot at being able to purchase those lots? Or are they just going to be anybody's?
Under the policy that was approved by City Council, that right of first refusal for Pontiac residents would only apply, it's my understanding, and I'll allow Deputy Mayor to jump in as well. It's my understanding that right of first refusal under the policy approved by Council would only apply to adjacent lots.
Adjacent lots.
And it would not apply to other lots. However, I want to emphasize that any sale of city-owned lots has to come to Council for approval. And that would apply to any and all city-owned lots. So if a proposal was made to acquire a lot and City Council by whoever, and City Council is not satisfied that that development plan serves the best interests of the city, City Council would have an opportunity to turn down that agreement or that sale of a city-owned lot. So this would not, again, supersede the ability of City Council to determine in any particular case with any particular parcel or parcels, hey, I don't support selling this to so-and-so because we, City Council, doesn't believe that that's in the best interest of the community.
Councilman Parker.
So as we talk about these three overlays and the developer, has he already bought properties in these areas, to your knowledge?
It is an option. He has not purchased. So there, there's obviously, he's got a kind of a waiver with, so it's a contract, but it's not executed until there would be some regulations that would permit this type of development.
And my follow-up question, since he's already bidding, has the residents in Pontiac been made known that these properties are now available for rent or for purchase?
I'm not aware of the county's disposition policy when it comes to this, so I would defer to the mayor if possible on that.
Well, I don't know anything about this developer or what his conversations with the county have been, so I'll defer to Manager Yandrick about that. But what I do want to emphasize is that I think, question for Manager Yandrick, that what Manager Yandrick is referencing is some conversation around county-owned lots. It has nothing to do with city-owned lots, which is what Councilwoman James is asking about. Is that accurate, Manager?
That's not what I asked. What I asked was, have the residents of Pontiac been made aware that these properties are available for purchase?
There is a surplus property list with the Oakland County Treasurer that I encourage any resident, if you're interested, learn if there is vacant land they go through multiple rounds of land sale after 3 years of non-payment of taxes. It's essentially defaults to the county. The county holds 2 land auctions a year. Sometimes there's a home on it, but often, in Pontiac's instance, it's vacant land. And you can bid on it at the first round, and then at the second round, it's reduced dramatically because, they're at the rate of the unpaid taxes, there wasn't a minimum bid. And so it usually is July, and then October or November is their second round. And then if the property doesn't sell at either of those bites at the apple, it goes on Oakland County's surplus property list, and that's through the Oakland County Treasurer. And you could find a big, long list by parcel and at least street name. If there's an address, there'd be an address. But I encourage residents or those that are looking to become residents that there is a vast supply of vacant land at Oakland County. This, not limited to these highlighted areas. It's through all parts of the city. I don't know how many right now. I imagine it's not as big as it was at the height of the Great Recession or after tax rolls tax bills continued after a few years not to be paid. But that is the Oakland County Treasurer. I'll look up the number and then report back to us in a minute. But they have that. It's publicly available. They try to market it. I don't think they put a lot of effort into it because they market when the auction comes, and then they kind of remain on the roster anything that doesn't sell. The properties, like those that have homes on it that are on the surplus property list, are often the condemned properties. Not always, but often. But when it comes to vacant land, there is a vast list. So I'm not sure how many years the surplus property has been there's no interest in it in certain concentrated areas. But so that is an opportunity for all Pontiac residents. The Oakland County Treasurer has that surplus property list. That's what I know. Any further discussion on the motion before us? Councilman Nicholson.
I just want to point out, too, that the notice of that auction is posted in the Open Press every year, and it's widely distributed. So when that does happen, the community certainly gets notice that auction is on its way.
I've announced it in the past, but I'll try and make sure we maybe even put it on the agenda so that way people know about the auctions, too. Before the pandemic, they were in person, and I think it's now maybe all online. But then they post lately it's been like a yellowy orange sign. They'll put it in the vacant lot and say auction and with information on how you can find out about the parcel. That's your biggest immediate clue that piece of land is up and available. But after the few cycles of auctions that year, it just kind of goes dormant and sits there on that list. But that's part of the reason why, if there's vacant land and it's not being cared for, let City Hall, City Council know, because it might be Oakland County who should be picking up the tab and maintaining it, because they're holding it as unsold and surplus vacant land. Councilman Nicholson, anything further? All right, hearing no further discussion, I just want to share the perspective that a lot of enthusiasm for the District 7 residents for the proposed Districts 1 and 3 for the overlay was in part because a lot of residents own vacant land. Those that live on Ardmore or on Central, they were thinking about the practical options that might mean for them. So there's issues where if it's got to be a 1,200 square foot home alone, it might not be realistic for them. It might not be something they can generate for their family or to expand their holdings. So that was of interest, and that was a lot of questions they asked about, like how that might be of benefit to them as already existing private holders of vacant land in those areas. But those that are familiar with these neighborhoods are probably already aware that if you drive down them, there are just vacant lots sort of peppered in between existing homes. And so I think it's very promising that we might be able to, as a neighborhood strategy called out for in the current master plan of 2014, about strengthening our neighborhoods and having a strategy. One of my predecessors on the city council for the East Side, Everett C., shared with me during his tenure on the council, he was always very interested to see any initiative, be it from Lighthouse, from Habitat for Humanity, if the federal government had a program, if the state had a housing initiative, that the East Side was open to being that opportunity for innovation and partnership. And that's a bulk of what the new construction of homes that we have had on the East Side in the last 20 plus years have been when different initiatives come along. And so I think that it's very promising that we may be able to be that innovation, areas of innovation, to see if it works. And I think that, I mean, we see on Mariva Street, a house sold a few weeks ago, it's 650 square feet, and it has been for the last 80 years. They got a lot of land, and it's a small house, but that the smaller homes are family homes for many families. And I think that it's an opportunity for families of various price points and various needs, because not every family has a bunch of kids, or not every family needs a bunch of bedrooms. And we have a lot of seasoned residents on the East Side that are looking for new quality options, so that way they don't have to look outside of Pontiac to remain in the community. And I want to see that in all parts of the city, you know, diverse housing options for every age and every price point. And I'm looking forward to the East Side being that opportunity, continue to be today too. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, speakers list exhausted. Roll call and adoption of the ordinance to amend the City of Pontiac zoning ordinance. Deputy Clerk.
Parker.
No.
Carrington.
No.
Goodman.
No.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Yes.
3 yeas, not 3 noes.
That motion fails. We are now at what was number 9. This is the second reading. Is there a motion for the adoption of an ordinance to amend the City of Pontiac zoning ordinance to include adult use marijuana businesses in designated overlay districts and associated changes? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Support.
All right, it's moved and seconded. We are now before us with the proposed ordinance amendment. Mayor and administration.
Yeah, thank you, President McGinnis. I would note that this is the companion ordinance, the zoning ordinance, to the what's commonly referred to as the business ordinance for marijuana. And we have learned that a group has collected signatures to subject that business ordinance to a referendum. We have not yet determined, that is to say the city clerk's office has not yet determined whether they have a sufficient number of valid signatures. But I would recommend that we wait to pass any amendment to the zoning ordinance until we have a better sense as to whether or not everything is going to be on hold again, subject to that effort to have a referendum on the business ordinance. So this was all just brought to my attention at 6:02 p.m. by the city's attorney, and certainly the city's attorney can speak to that question as well.
For 1 week? Postpone indefinitely?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's a motion and a second to postpone indefinitely. Can Attorney Murphy give us more context before we consider the vote?
Yes, there was a group, Cannabis for, or Citizens for Equitable Cannabis, that submitted signatures to the clerk last Thursday, and the clerk has not yet reviewed the signatures to determine their validity, but they did exceed the minimum number required. So there's a question of whether or not there are sufficient signatures. There's no statement of organization filed by that committee, which suggests that it's one person who's funding that entire process. And there was no campaign finance statement filed on October 25th, which if they spent more than $1,000 before the 21st of October, they were required by law to file a financing statement. But as of a couple days ago, there was no financing statement filed. So at this point, we think we know who it is, but officially there's nothing on file to indicate exactly who it is. But at this point in time, there's a possibility that the council will have to have a meeting under the charter to determine whether the amended business ordinance should go on the ballot in February or be nullified.
All right, any further discussion on the motion to postpone? Hearing no further discussion, roll call on the motion to postpone indefinitely. Clerk, Deputy Clerk.
Carrington,
Yes.
Goodman, James,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Nicholson,
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
5 yeas, no nays.
The motion carries. It is postponed. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution to approve the first reading of zoning text amendments regarding mobile temporary uses, mobile food vendors, and mobile food parklets?
So support.
Moved by Councilman Nicholson, second by Councilman Parker. That motion is now before us. Mayor Administration.
Thank you very much, President McGinnis. This is one of two proposed ordinances, one being a zoning text amendment and the other being a similar amendment that's a companion piece relating to temporary events and to food vendors in the city. This is part of our continuing effort to clarify rules for food vendors to make it easier and clearer for food vendors to operate, and also to better allow clarity around the rules for temporary events so that it's easier for folks to hold temporary events as appropriate. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Manager Yandrick to get into the details.
Good evening again. So I have a presentation I will just share. This is a little bit of a longer presentation, I think, just to include the regulations and just provide clarity to everyone that is listening. So. Pardon me, give me just a second. So this is a zoning and text map amendment. It is citywide, and it also establishes one overlay district, which I will be discussing, and that's why it is a map amendment. It is city initiated again, and the request is for amendments to regulations and process for mobile food vendors and temporary uses. So this was discussed with Planning Commission at informational session in September. There was a public hearing on October 11th. Staff has reviewed the enforcement and a few of the finer details of this ordinance before presenting it to City Council. We've done that with the Kelly firm, and this did not, anything that was changed did not need to go back to the public hearing because it really was minor and procedural in nature. So the background, the city has an annual mobile food vendor license program, but has very little zoning regulations for time, place, and manner of these operations outside of temporary events. The regulations that do exist were passed in, I believe, 2018, around that time frame, and are more about prohibitions for mobile food trucks than guidance for their land uses and their operations. The city desires to clarify the difference between special events and temporary uses for the public and event organizers to make it easier for applicants to understand the process and proceed through that application process. So for mobile food vendors, as it currently exists today, you must get an annual city license that's very similar to the business license program. And this ordinance just sort of reinforces that. But if the location of mobile food vendors, this is a little different. So if there is a mobile food vendor, it must have one of the 4 zoning certificates up there. And one is a mobile food vendor location. So this is a temporary use zoning certificate for an annual zoning permit for a location on a multifamily or non-residential property. This would be for a mobile food vendor to operate at a gas station, at an apartment complex, maybe for so many hours a day, but throughout the year. It is an annual permit for a temporary use. It does give the opportunity for staff to review to make sure that it's being done safely and the mobile food vendor is following all safety regulations. Number 2 is a temporary use major for special events for a limited period of time. This is our special events. There's a special events application. We're rebranding this as a temporary use major just to make that simpler. And I'll discuss the differences between these in a few slides. We also have temporary use minor for a smaller special event for a limited period of time. An example I use for this is if a business is doing a sidewalk sale, they're utilizing some of the parking lot. This isn't requiring large fire review and coordination, but it does require a zoning permit, again, just to make sure that there's safety involved and that our police and fire are at least notified that something is occurring on the property. The last thing is a zoning certificate for a mobile food parklet. So again, all food trucks must get an annual license from the City of Pontiac Municipal Code. And really we're talking about mobile food vendors, but if it's a mobile food truck, it also needs an annual inspection from the Waterford Township Fire Department. We are proposing that all food trucks and parts thereof be located that are on or near a fueling station must be a minimum of 35 feet from a fueling pump. This is currently a fire department regulation, but we wanted to include this in the zoning certificate to really reinforce that a food vendor is not operating too close to a gas station or fueling pump. And again, any City of Pontiac licensed mobile food vendor that's part of a community event, special event, temporary use may not be subject to the regulations of the zoning district of the approved event. I will discuss that in a second. But the event organizer is responsible for obtaining that proper event permit and with licensure and location and listing the mobile food vendors that are operating there. Lastly, noise and speakers will be permitted with these uses, but really restricted to 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., which is consistent with our city's noise ordinance. So you cannot be if you're in downtown, which may allow mobile food vendors at later hours, you cannot be blasting noise beyond 10 p.m. for the residents that live down there. So the following slides highlight proposed regulations for each zoning district for the annual mobile food vendor location permit. So what I'm about to discuss is not if you're doing a temporary event. That really falls under a different category, but this is only if you're getting this annual permit, and this is really by the property itself. So for our single family and two family properties, R1, R1A, R1B, R2, food trucks are prohibited from operating on a public street and private properties except where outlined in the ordinance. Again, we have got the section about the inspections. A food truck, however, may operate in a public park, school, or community center between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. The applicant must get approval from the property owner, so if it's in a park, you must get approval from the city. If the food truck is a standalone food truck, the use can operate as part of an annual temporary use, or again, if there's a temporary event going on there for a larger event. A private residence where catering is being offered. The event is not open to the general public and patrons are not paying for food. All three of those, the items are exempt for this ordinance because it's really catering and not a food truck. So if someone's food truck was in a driveway, you cannot have it open to the public. You can't be paying for food. It really should be used for private purposes only. So for R3 and R4 zoning districts, this is multifamily. The property owner can seek a zoning certificate for one mobile food truck at a time for up to 6 hours a day. This is an annual permit, and again, food trucks must be licensed. Now, you can have a different food truck each day that's there, but really it just allows for this on a multifamily property. There are some apartment complexes that currently utilize this as a service to their residents. For the C0, C1, C3, C4, Town Center, which is TC, Civic Center, which is CC, and MUD, which is Mixed Use District. These are a lot of our commercial districts. So a property owner can seek a zoning certificate for a temporary use for one food truck up to 10 hours a day between the hours of 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. This is an annual permit, again, for times, dates, and locations. Food trucks must be licensed. We chose 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. because these uses, while they're a little bit more commercial, are still, most of them are nearby to residential uses. so we didn't think that a later hour was as appropriate, particularly because these are along thoroughfares. The applicant, as part of their application, must provide a sketch plan and adequately account for parking existing businesses and customers for the mobile food vendor. Now, mobile food trucks are not permitted within 150 feet of a property of a restaurant unless the restaurant provides written notarized authorization for the mobile food vendor to operate there. Again, it has to get an annual license through the city and the fire department. And then a key thing is food trucks will be prohibited on sites that are vacant and do not have an active business with a certificate of occupancy. And we want to make sure for patrons of these food vendors that it is a safe location, and the city cannot guarantee that without having a certificate of occupancy and having a business owner that is maintaining their property there. Downtown, which is the C2 district, the property owner can seek a zoning certificate for a temporary use for one mobile food truck at a time. Again, this is an annual permit. Hours of operation are permitted between 8 a.m. and I want to make sure that that is correct. I can verify the hours for the C2. The applicant, again, must provide a sketch plan, but the mobile food vendors are not permitted with 100 feet of a restaurant unless, because restaurants are a lot closer together in the downtown area. Now, on public parking spaces, it's prohibited unless part of an approved temporary event that actually closes the street. So a mobile food vendor would not be able to park in the, for more than 2 hours, in a lot. They would not be able to operate a commercial operation in a city parking lot or parking space, because that's really intended for patrons of the businesses there, and we don't want to incentivize commercial uses during regular business hours for the businesses and their patrons that are trying to reflect that. So moving on to the next district, which is IP1, M1, and M2, these are industrial districts. The property owner can seek a zoning certificate for a temporary use for 2 food trucks at a time for up to 10 hours a day. And again, this is an annual permit. Some of the same regulations take place here. Now, the reason why staff is proposing 2 for this is because these are large employers. And so sometimes with large employers, you may need more food trucks as a service to those employees to be able to operate. Now, and this is on a daily, weekly basis that this would be offered for these businesses in these zoning districts. So let's talk about mobile food parklets. This is not something we have in the city, but this zoning ordinance is introducing it. It is an establishment of a permanent location of mobile food vendors. While the mobile food vendor may be temporarily at the site contains permanent features such as parking, lighting, electrical, and other elements that are typical with more of a permanent establishment. So a property owner may apply through administrative site plan for a permanent food truck site, or also known as a parklet. And it must be in a mobile food parklet overlay district, which is located on downtown, Woodward, and West Huron, and I will share that map in a moment. A permanent curb separation between food trucks, pedestrians, and vehicles, as well as permanent electrical connections would be required as part of this. There would be benches and related items for optional consumption on site. There would be parking. You would be required to have a minimum of 4 spaces and then 2 spaces for every additional food truck. And while the owner does not need a temporary zoning permit each year, unlike these other properties, the mobile food vendors, again, must be licensed and inspected yearly through the city. So this is the overlay district, and if I can, I'm going to walk over to the podium or over to the projector for just a second, because I don't have a laser pointer. These hatching shades right here are the location on West Huron, on Woodward, and in the downtown area. Now, I do want to note a couple things. The outside of downtown on Woodward was also chosen as options for people that are driving around. And then on West Huron Street, we did not choose locations that had residential zoning districts. We really were choosing the existing commercial properties that are here. And at the Planning Commission public hearing, there were a few members that were wondering about where could this go, because there are some vacant properties where there's not a business there, but there are not vacant properties that there's not development. But really, from staff's perspective, we were looking at the corridor as a whole, and a potential developer may find an opportunity here to redevelop this site. Now, as part of Planning Commission's deliberations, they did, while staff chose the non-residential zones here and excluded the historic zones, the post office property and the adjacent, I think that's the former bank building, if the 5-story building that's on West Huron, at 640 West Huron, they removed that from the overlay district. Really, I think what was shared by Planning Commission is they wanted to see that developed and did not want to incentivize a lesser use on those properties. So if there's any questions about that overlay district, please let me know. But you would only be able to build a parklet within the hatched areas that are located on this map. So going back to mobile food vendors in general, this really, the staff created or is proposing that after 2 building, fire, or code enforcement or zoning violations in a 12-month period for a mobile food vendor, that mobile food vendor is prohibited from operating in the city for 6 months, starting with the 3rd violation. And with our code enforcement team, we feel very confident that we're going to be able to enforce this with the mobile food vendors that are licensed through the city. They're already coming forward, but we would have the ability to regulate that. Also, with the property owners that these sites are occurring. So as part of this, I've talked a lot about temporary uses. So we're going to transition from mobile food vendors specifically to temporary uses. This is a photo from Roadkill several years ago. I just wanted to share as part of this. So there are temporary uses in the current zoning code, but there's a little ambiguity between what's what, and staff wanted to propose some differentiation to make it easier. So minor temporary uses are the first item. It's uses that are established for a fixed period of time because generally not appropriate for a zoning district on a long-term or continuous basis. These can include farm stands, sidewalk sales, or smaller commercial-related events that expect less than 200 people that are open to the public. These events can be up to 30 days in a calendar year, and days can be consecutive or non-consecutive days, but must be established as part of a zoning permit. So, contrary to minor, we have major. And so that same regulation is up top. I will not repeat it. However, if you have any of these criteria, this would elevate this from a minor to a major, which is a higher review of staff. It's actually a higher application fee and submittal requirements. So if there are 200 or more individuals expected to attend, if you have 3 or more mobile food vendors or commercial vendors, if you have consumption of alcohol on premise, temporary staging for concerts and performances, multiple entertainment areas, 1 large entertainment area, or if you're doing fireworks, this is a temporary use major. This requires the applicant to provide certificate of insurance and liability for the event, very similar to what we currently do for fireworks and larger events in the city. Now, again, private events not open to the public are really exempt from the zoning ordinance, but are still required to file any applications or notifications to the city's building department, the Waterford Township Fire Department, or Oakland County Sheriff's Office. And again, this reiterates what is required to make sure that no one is skipping any necessary steps, primarily for safety reasons. Again, with major, as I mentioned, copies of insurance policies naming the city as an additional insurer for $1 million will be required, and it will indicate coverage for the event. Nothing in this ordinance shall be construed in effect to any way that the city's governmental immunity as provided by law. And then the certification that the applicant will identify the city and hold it harmless and defend it from any claims, lawsuits, or liability arising from the temporary use, including any costs or attorney's fees. So one of the things with major events and this is the applicant to really provide this as part of their application. And this is also what staff can review when reviewing an application, because we don't have criteria at the moment that really to quantify if something may not be a good idea for the community. So really it's the establishment of 10 conditions, and 1 is environmental health, 2 is lighting, 3, if the temporary uses occur during daylight hours, sufficient lighting may be required in the parking areas. 4, parking areas sufficient to provide parking spaces for the maximum number of people allowed at any single time for the temporary use. 5, traffic. 6, emergency services. 7, the buildings occupied for public for assembly purposes shall meet the state of Michigan construction code. 8, the signage shall comply with the city's zoning ordinance, and I said 10, I apologize, it was 9. The last one, again, a little different, is the environment. All activities shall conform to the soil erosion and sedimentation requirements of the Drain Commission and Michigan Department of Environmental Quality for wetland stream crossings and water quality protection. And for some temporary events, that is actually a very important thing. If you're parking and there's a large amount of rain, we want to make sure that it doesn't create, even if for a temporary event, doesn't create a permanent issue for the environmental quality. There are a few minor exceptions on temporary uses. If it's a city, county, or state-sponsored temporary use, if it's a funeral procession, or if it's a private gathering, graduation party, again, that is completely private and really not being done for the public or pecuniary gain or profit. In reviewing this, garage and estate sales are going to be required to get a temporary use permit, but staff understands that there is a benefit for residential properties to have garage and estate sales as a secondary use. And so that fee is proposed to be waived as part of this ordinance, but a property may have up to 2 events lasting up to 3 consecutive days in a calendar year. What we want to prevent is a garage sale going on for a month or 2 months. And while there are a few instances of that I hear from code enforcement, again, we would want to allow garage and estate sales. The fee would be waived, but really it'd be for a limited amount of time that they would be able to do that in an annual basis. So just to summarize, this ordinance establishes and revises the rules and regulations for all mobile food vendors in the city. And really kind of sets a better framework for temporary use event zoning permits for major, minor, and annual mobile food vendor location. And this establishes mobile food parklets, really is a land use option in the city. So Planning Commission at the public hearing recommended approval 6-0 with the zoning text and map amendments with 1 condition of approval on the insurance requirements, and that was for minor temporary uses. That has been reflected within the ordinance that is before you this evening. So thank you. I know that was a long presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
Looks like the city attorney wants to flag another aspect.
So there are 2 things. The first thing is that in the C2 downtown district, the hours actually go till 3 a.m.
Yep.
That was a change that we made before we went to Planning Commission. I know you were questioning it, so I just wanted to verify it. And the second thing is that on page 33 of the ordinance, I noticed a typo when I was reviewing it. I have revised that. So on page 33, paragraph C2, it stated the property that a mobile food truck parklet must be located 150 feet from a restaurant. Obviously, that was missing some language, so I revised it to state the property on which a mobile food truck parklet is operating must be 150 feet. That will be before you before second reading. I just wanted to clarify that that has been corrected.
Pro Tem Carrington, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, President McGinnis. I guess my concern for this ordinance is the ability or the capacity of code enforcement department to actually regulate all this. It's because currently I know they haven't been able to regulate it at all in the 6th district when it comes to excessive these food trucks actually being at locations for not just a few days, but basically the whole summer.
Yeah.
And I know some of these food vendors definitely haven't had the opportunity to get permission from those that own those particular properties. Secondly, concerning garage sales, this is also an issue where we have garage sales that go on not for 3 days, but definitely go on all through the summer. And we haven't been able to shut these particular events down. So I'm just wondering, how do we think code enforcement is able to have the capacity to even do these greater requirements?
So regarding garage sales, I worked with Jack McIntyre, the code enforcement manager, specifically to discuss this with him and our community development director. And at 3 days, and with a zoning permit, that district member where that is being located would have the ability to know that that is coming up, and there's a defined period of time. Like, it's a very short period of time. It's a little more challenging when it might be 7 days or 14 days to manage when that start is, but Jack has shared his confidence with me that 3 days would be enough.
Thank you.
And then the second part of that. So regarding mobile food vendors, we currently have a business license program, but as part of requiring a zoning permit from the property owner, which we don't do at the moment unless it's like a small temporary event, we have the ability at the planning staff level to assist code enforcement. That could easily be a web map, as we create databases for these approved mobile food vendors for locations, times, hours, and I think that data share that we're getting from the zoning certificate and the requirements to submit for that can really help code enforcement with tools to be able to manage that, because in my perspective, it's been the wild, wild west this year without those regulations, and we don't have anything in place that really regulates where a mobile food truck, how long they can operate, where they can operate, and I think this really helps us to kind of manage and set that expectation for the property owner and the mobile food vendor of here's the guidelines that you need to follow.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Mayor Grimel.
Yeah, I think we can have our code enforcement manager, Jack McIntyre, follow up directly with you to answer the question. We can also have him, of course, at next week's city council meeting because it's an important question. I think Manager Yandrick answered the question pretty squarely about the yard sales. And I think the goal of this amendment is to try to provide some additional clarity around those rules and create a process through a application program so that people can apply to have yard sales and actually make it clear that if they don't get that permit, then it would be an issue subject to city regulation. In terms of the other question, though, that you raised about food vendors not having permission of property owners, at least that wouldn't really be an issue for code enforcement. That would be an issue of trespass, frankly, where the private property owner would need to ultimately let the people on their property know, hey, you're not allowed to be here. And if they refuse to leave, then it becomes a question for the sheriff's office to come and say, hey, you gotta leave. You don't have permission to be here. So at least that issue I don't think is a code enforcement violation concern. And I have not heard of it before tonight anyway, but we can certainly have Manager McIntyre get directly with you and other council members on it.
Councilman Goodman, followed by Councilman James. And I just, as a point of order, our rules and procedures do not prohibit signs, but I would encourage considering that there are those behind you that may be looking, that need to see who's speaking. So just as a courtesy, I'm not trying to be a buzzkill, but just want to consider that so that way all members of the audience can see the deliberations. Councilman Goodman?
I do want to ask a question when it comes to the C2 zoning district. And this is me thinking a little bit further ahead in terms of, allowing mobile vendors in what is hopefully going to be a more populated downtown with restaurants, because I would love to be able to, eat downtown more regularly. I feel like having it in there to where a vendor must have written permission from every restaurant within 150 feet, given the way in which personal sometimes conflicts with business. I feel like having every single restaurant agree to it is something, could possibly be a tall ask, given, again, sometimes the personal that leaks over. So I don't know if there's some way to make it to where it is a supermajority or some number that does allow, or consider the fact that just sometimes getting everyone to agree to their money being split and shared with other people is sometimes a very tall ask for some.
So this is a common regulation. So other communities do have a very similar regulation with restaurants, and we have 100 feet for just a temporary mobile food truck. The parklets are 100 feet, 50 feet, but it's only 100 feet there. And you are correct. There could be multiple restaurants. I think we are trying to find a fair and equitable thing, just to balance the interests of a food truck downtown and a brick and mortar that's there. But I think if City Council wants to take a motion, to consider alternatives to that, I think we'd be open to that.
Councilman James, followed by Mayor Brunel.
Yeah.
Were you all set? I'm sorry. Okay, Councilman James.
Okay. I'm concerned about the minor events because this is quite an extensive change that we're doing, and we've got a lot of things lumped together. But I'm concerned about your minor events guidelines. Your exception criteria is very, very small. I'm mainly concerned about our community groups in the city who hold events all the time, annual events that have been going on for a number of years, like our Stop the Violence marches by various individuals in the city. And our new guidelines here, to me, it's just going to wipe out a lot of activity that we have in our city that I would consider that provide real community benefit for our city. I would love to see us with some real criteria for establishing exceptions to these guidelines, because I think your minor events are not realistic in terms of a lot of our community groups, the autistic walk that the lady has, and so many other. I mean, right now there's plans for a feeding the homeless. That's an annual event that takes place every Thanksgiving Day. There are a lot of events that take place in the city that have real community benefit, and this doesn't really seem to give very much leeway for those groups to be able to continue to do what they have done, which do benefit our community. So I think we need to do some more work on looking at what is accepted from these minor and major events.
And if I may add, probably there's very little that is changing from the minor temporary events that we don't already have in the ordinance. But there can, part of what the staff is reviewing as part of this is making sure that there is, again, safety and coordination for a temporary land use that's there. And I think Morgan also had something to say on that.
So, Mark is correct. We're not making significant changes to the temporary use policy as it is. We're changing it from a minor temporary use, which requires less requirements, less obligations in the application, and a major temporary use, which requires you to make sure that we're making sure all the residents are safe. That being said, there is one provision that we are adding in this proposed ordinance, and that is an exception for temporary uses conducted within a building designed and approved for assembly use, such as churches, halls, and fraternal organizations, libraries, schools, and recreational facilities. So I believe that most of the things that you're referring to would fall under that exception.
But these things are not inside, they're outside.
We can potentially amend the ordinance to say on the property located on a church or a library.
I think there's a lot there. This is a huge ordinance, and there are a lot of things that are happening in the city that it just does not, it does not recognize, and it's not going to work. It is not going to work because what we don't want to do is shut down so many activities and things that we have going on in this city that are very positive, and we have never, I'm sure that these individuals have never had to comply with your temporary use rule. I'm sure that they have never had to comply with that. So if we approve this, then it's saying, okay, from now on, they do have to comply with it, And I think it's excessive. I really do. You know, when it comes to just regular community groups who are in a park wanting to do something for 3 to 4 hours and under 200 people, I really think this is overkill, and I think we definitely need to establish some criteria, some exception criteria. And the view that you had, I don't think is going to cover the concerns that I have.
And if I may add, if you're requesting to use a pavilion at a park, or if you're requesting to have a smaller event at a park, it may fall under the park guidelines, which is different than this. This is for private property, for private properties. Now, if there's a major event, that can occur in a park. And so a major event, we would coordinate with Alex Zegarzuski to do that. But I know there was a high school reunion that was taking place there that they were not having food trucks or setting up structures. They did not require a zoning permit for that to occur. It required obviously a rental for the park itself. But that's, I think that's a good point, and I think staff is open to learning a little bit more about the existing framework. But it is important for a city to be able to understand, for safety reasons, these events that they're occurring. And each of these minor events that have been approved this year, while it may not be reviewed heavily with fire and police, they are notified of each of them. And, we want that to continue, as part of, because again, you're creating a temporary event there, the city has the opportunity to regulate that. And I think one of the challenges when we were coming up with this is, what is a fair exception? We want to make sure we're not being capricious, that we're allowing, some groups and not for others, to make sure we're constitutionally keeping this an appropriate zoning regulation. So,
Mayor Brimel?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the questions and concerns because I think they're really important points, and I think we want to make sure that we're ensuring public safety without being too onerous. And I don't know to what extent this proposal was vetted in city council subcommittees, but it certainly, I think, merits consideration and discussion by subcommittees if it hasn't already been vetted in some of those subcommittees. The two that immediately come to mind, well, maybe three actually, are the Economic Development Subcommittee, the Parks and Recreation Subcommittee, and the Public Safety Subcommittee, since I think it touches on all three of those topics. And so we're very open to workshopping this a little bit further to make sure that it addresses the needs of the community without being unduly onerous on different groups and organizations.
Further discussion? I do want to flag the parklet footprint where you've got those districts. It looks like the Huron corridor, there looks like there's a large parcel that is not highlighted. I'm assuming it's the proposed Webster Community Center because has an R1 zoning designation that allows, it was a school, a community center is also eligible for R1 zoning, so new zoning wasn't needed. But it seems as though that fits the community center criteria that would benefit from, sort of pop-up food truck activities.
So the reason staff did initially propose that property, again, was the base zoning district being R1, not looking, beyond that. But, as of today, I think several of us at staff and council received an email from Yoakum about, the desire to have one of those there. And so I think city council can consider that, possibly adding on to that amendment, adding that area.
This is a first reading, of course. At least 2 readings are required for any ordinance change. Any further discussion on the resolution, recognizing it being read for a first time? Hearing no further discussion, speakers list is exhausted. Deputy Clerk, roll call on adoption of the resolution on the first reading.
Goodman.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Nick.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Carrington.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. The resolution on the first reading has been adopted. Is there a motion to adopt the next resolution to approve the first reading of the zoning text amendment regarding mobile food vendors in the city?
Support.
Moved by Councilman Nicholson, seconded by Councilman Goodman. So it looks like we've got a related piece of business here. Want to give it right to Manager Yandrick, Mayor Greimel?
I do, yeah, same general topic, so take it away, Manager.
So I do not have a PowerPoint presentation for this, but what I wanted to describe is this is an ordinance change to our mobile food vendor in the municipal ordinance. So this did not have to go to Planning Commission. And really the goal of these amendments is to align with the amendments that were proposed for the zoning ordinance. And there are a lot of these are cleanup items in terms of instead of license, a permit is required to have a mobile food vendor, and that would be referring to the zoning permit. We start referring to mobile food vendors instead of mobile food trucks, appropriately identifying the section of the city and the regulations in hand. A lot of these are, really minor. Honestly, this is just a cleanup ordinance, and there really isn't anything major. But we're just making sure that this is, again, in alignment with the zoning ordinance for the enforcement purposes. We do have a few things removed, just having to do with things that we find outdated. And flashing and blinking lights and strobe lights are not allowed on vehicles, but we do have regulations within the zoning ordinance. But that's the municipal ordinance.
Okay, so this just acknowledges that it's been read for a first time. It is not enacting the change. Any further discussion on the resolution for that first reading? Hearing nothing further, roll call. Deputy Clerk on adoption of the resolution.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes?
Nicholson,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Carrington,
Yes.
Goodman.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. That's the first reading. All right, we are now at, is there a motion to adopt the resolution to engage Baird for purposes of improving the city's credit rating and to provide advice and guidance on financial options?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Support.
It's been moved by Councilman Nicholson, seconded by Councilman Parker. That resolution is now before us. Mayor Greimel.
Yeah, thank you, President McGinnis. This is a agenda item to authorize the city to engage the services of Baird. We have been in touch with Miller Canfield. They are serving and have long served as the city's bond counsel. But as we look at ways to finance building improvements, road improvements, a number of different options moving forward, we need not only the help of bond counsel, but also the help of a financial advisor who can actually crunch the numbers in terms of what's feasible. This would not commit the city to going down any particular financing road, but it would allow us to determine what is possible, what is feasible, what are our options when it comes to different financing approaches, so that those can then be brought before City Council in the near future. And in order to do that, we are recommending that the city retain the services of Baird, which is such a financial and financing advisory firm. And we brought a resolution before you. The original resolution in the packet has been modified slightly by Clark Hill, and you have a new resolution that has been distributed before you. Along with that, we have provided a proposed contract from Baird, but we believe that we can reduce their rates further, and Clark Hill has been engaging in some negotiations and discussions with Baird with an eye towards reducing those rates. So the revised resolution before you would make it clear that this is authorizing the city to engage in a contract with Baird subject to those negotiations.
The city charter and ordinances provides the mayor the authority to enter into professional services contracts. Mayor Greimel, does this qualify as a professional services contract as deemed by the city's attorneys?
It does, but the reason we wanted to make sure to bring it before City Council is any professional services contract in excess of $10,000 still needs City Council approval, even if it is a professional services agreement. Now, there are two exceptions to that. One is accounting services, and one is legal services. And even in the case of legal services, we brought those matters generally, with some exceptions, before City Council. But because this is a professional services contract in excess of $10,000, it needs to be approved by City Council.
All right, very good. And as was shared in public comment, this firm is a subject matter expert. They have been utilized by the City of Pontiac for similar purposes. When Pro Tem Carrington and I served on the Pontiac School District Board of Education, it was Baird and Company that was the bonding expert that was utilized for when they went out to bond for some of those construction projects for the school district. So long story short, this would provide us the pathway and the information so that way, rather than just paying for everything out of the savings account, so to speak, or the checking account, we might be able to know if it's important for us to do long-term financing for some of these future projects. Right now, we don't have enough information to be able to fully know all the options, so this pathway would allow those opportunities, and that's my understanding from the Finance and Personnel Subcommittee. Councilman Nicholson? Okay.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion on the motion before us? Hearing no further discussion, speakers is exhausted. Roll call on the adoption of the resolution to engage Baird for the purposes of improving the city's credit rating and provide advice and guidance on financial options. Deputy Clerk.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Nicholson?
Yes.
Parker? Yes. Carrington?
Yes.
Goodman?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. The resolution is adopted. Is there a motion to adopt a resolution to approve awarding print design and mailing services contract to the original print shop of Pontiac?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Nicholson, seconded by Councilwoman James. Mayor and Administration.
Thank you. We want to make sure that we're putting in place a contract for printing of documents, of providing mail house services, in particular for the now quarterly newsletter that the city has instituted and that is mailed out to Pontiac households, as well as for design services when it comes to laying out those kinds of documents and mailings. We wanted to make sure that we went through a proper RFP process, that we brought this before City Council, and we do have with us, I believe, our purchasing manager, Alicia Martin, and there she is, hiding in the back. And we also have with us our communications director, who can speak to this as well, but let's kick it off with our purchasing manager, Alicia Martin.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As the mayor has indicated, we're bringing before council resolution to award the bid to and execute an agreement with the original print shop for the design, print, and mailing of the City of Pontiac's community newsletter. I'm sorry, did someone say anything?
No.
Oh, I thought someone said something. The community newsletter is oversight by the communications department, which is overseen by Paula Bridges, who is our communications director. We indicated that this is a community newsletter that is produced on a quarterly basis. The supplier, the purpose of this resolution again is to establish an agreement with the print company. The spend is approaching $10,000 according to ordinance. Major purchases, $10,000 or more, must be put out for bid. And so that's why we did this bid process, to make sure we are in line with ordinance and also to establish an agreement. This was posted on September the 11th to BidNet and also to the city's purchasing webpage. The initial deadline for solicitations was October 6th. There was a total of 3 firms that submitted a bid. Those firms was the original print shop in Pontiac, Michigan, Advanced Marketing Partners in Canton, Michigan, and Our Custom Publishing in Troy, Michigan. The lowest bid was the original print shop in Pontiac, Michigan. After doing tabulation and after going back to all 3 firms and making sure we had an apples to apples comparison. At first we didn't have that. So we went back to all of the firms to make sure we did capture that so we can make a recommendation before council. Are there any questions for me regarding the
discussion?
process?
Pro Tem Carrington.
Just a quick question. Thank you for the information. And I see that you did go out for a bid. Could the communication director come up to the mic? I just want to ask her a few questions.
Good evening, Council.
Yeah, thank you. So you've been working previously with this particular company.
Mm-hmm.
So what has been your take on the professionalism of the product? Are you pleased?
I am pleased with the high quality of the service, the responsiveness. The individual is the company is knows Pontiac, its zip codes, the mailing processes that are needed to get the product out. The person that does our design has given practically daily service to meet the need. Many other locations would charge us exponentially more to make the many requests for changes, the alterations and edits and what have you. When they send it out, it really is on a rapid scale. I'm actually working on compiling the information for the next newsletter, which actually will be our third in the 6 months. And so there is a need to meet the needs of the residents to get the information that is happening within the city on a regular basis. And I have found that company to be very responsive and actually extremely affordable in its pricing. They came in probably at a third of some of the other companies. Some companies just stated outright, we just don't do the various needs of the totality of the project, which is sending it out citywide, maybe having different design elements that need almost daily attention. And this company has been very responsive in every respect.
Thank you, Ms. Bridges. No further question.
Councilwoman James.
Yes, what's the length of this contract? Could the purchasing?
So I believe we're going to seek a 2-year term with an option to renew for 2 additional years.
Okay, and is there a total cost for that, or is it this amount? Was that per newsletter?
So the total was for 4 quarterly newsletters. And so I'm just grabbing the bid tabulation. So the cost per issue was less than $14,000 for the original print shop. So that's the cost per issue, so you multiply that by 4.
Okay. All right. Oh, I see. Okay. All right.
Further discussion? Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I want to talk to Ms. Bridges.
Okay.
If I recall.
No problem. I'll leave this here in case after.
Thank you. Ms. Bridges, thank you.
Yes, sir.
If I recall, previously we discussed this newsletter and obviously the good services that we're getting.
Mm-hmm.
And this is based on the addresses that we have within the city matrix.
Yes, sir.
Have that increased any? And would that, if that does increase, would that adjust the pricing of this?
We actually adjusted that pricing based on occupied households within the city. So this is actually a figure that is larger than the number that we previously sent out, because now we're going to take a citywide focus and it will go to every occupied dwelling. So we had to increase it. And actually, as we increased the price, and we took a different perspective on the postage going to each occupied household, it actually reduced the cost of postage. But one thing that this new contract does not really tell the story, which is the greater portion of that contract is for postage. And then the next aspect of it is the actual printing, which stays stagnant. So in essence, by taking a deeper dive into how we were printing, what we needed to print, how we needed to get it out to every household without overlap or without errors, not going to places it shouldn't go, doubling up, we actually were able to save costs with postage by increasing that amount, so to speak.
And I know the purchasing record probably answered this one. If you said it was for a 2-year contract with a 2-year option.
One option for an additional 2 years.
Right. Would the price remain the same for the optional years?
Yes, we will negotiate the price, that the price will remain the same. According to, I'm getting tongue-tied here, but Communications Director just indicated that the cost of postage can change, so that will vary.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, speakers, this is exhausted. Roll call and adoption of the resolution approving the, to approve the awarding of print design and mailing services contract to the original print shop of Pontiac. Deputy Clerk.
Nicholson?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
Carrington?
Yes.
Goodman?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
The motion carries. The resolution is adopted. We are now at public comment. Who is the first requested resident to speak?
Mr. Robert Bass, public comment.
Is the microphone on?
Good evening. My name is Robert Bass, President of Citizen District Council, and I basically came down to say that we're having our second and last meeting of the year for November by Zoom this coming Saturday, the 8th. So, but there is something that's troubling me, and I'm not going to be satisfied till I get it out. So let me say this. Citizen District Council is a specialized organization. It's been in action ever since the 70s, as far as I know. But bottom line is, it's something that was given to the residents to have their voices heard and also give oversight to their particular districts, and also have a direct contact with the council members, because the council members are the ones that are supposed to be at our table giving us advice. Now, what has happened is I've fought for, I'm going into my 4th year, trying to make sure that the CDC stay in existence. I would like for it to go back to being all over the 7 districts. But if y'all don't want it, then that's fine. But right now, it's one active Citizen District Council that deals with development, economic development, and redevelopment. That's all we do. So that was created so that you wouldn't have to jump around to all of the meetings that take places in districts, so that you would have that one-stop shop to go to. That's why they created it with the notice that we are supposed to have no less than 26 members. We can have less than 26 members, no more than 26 members, but they have to be from all over the district, so that when we speak to council in our meetings and in our coordinating council meetings, they have representation from everybody in the district, somebody from all over the district. So right now, I have people that's trying to blur the lines of the CDC and the Association of Block Clubs. How they operate has no difference to me one way or the other. How you want to run your meeting, that's great. The coalition was an added feature to make sure that our voices was really heard. But if they don't want that, that's fine with me as well. But the Citizen District Council ain't going nowhere. This one's not. One for District 1 is not going anywhere. So blurring the lines and making other organizations feel like they can do the same thing we do. The only time that we have administration or come to our meetings is to tell us about the development and economic development, which is the funding and money and houses. That's all we deal with. But everybody else deals with their neighborhoods and what's going on in their neighborhood. I try to stay out of that lane because we are specialized and legislated. But when it comes to hurting the residents, to hurt me or to hurt my organization, that's where I take exception to. And I will not be stepped on, I will not be ran out, and I will not be disrespected. We're supposed to have an open door to the administration as well as the directors.
I've given you a lot of leeway, but.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. Mr. Veteran Bill Maxey.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Pontiac, H. Bill Maxey, community activists. I have some good news tonight. First, appreciation is always good news. I won't go into detail, but thank the administration and legislative office for participating in our Veterans Day Parade. We'll have more detail and be more personal next week. Please write these two numbers down, telephone numbers. 248-762-4953. 248-898-4546. On the 27th of November, the Pontiac community citizens will have a focus and assembly. And the message and the topic is equity and service, quality and service. On the 27th of November at the library. Prior to that, I have a challenge. The community has a challenge. We would like to have 25 Facebook participants between today and the 27th of November to call this number. Did I say 25? Yeah, 25. You will get all of the details. We have some challenges which the community we can handle ourselves. We can handle this. But we need to come together on collaboration. Communication first, then collaboration. Again, tomorrow, which is, I believe, is the 15th through the 27th, you will call this number. The hours will be 2 to 4 p.m. every day. When I say call, let me be specific. Please email me, don't call, not email me, but text. Please text. You will get an answer in 48 hours and all the details that you need to know. Who, what, when, where, and how. We'll explain, but it's very important. Again, 25 Facebook captains. We need your help. We need to talk to you. Community need to come together for this specific program and specific challenges. On the 27th, we'll have our roundtable from these telephone calls. And this will be the community that will, part of the community that will be making decisions and presenting to others. It's something we can do ourselves. Council always said, well, if you communicate with us, we're going to do more than communicate. We're going to have action, execute. We'll be alive. Thank you much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Quincy Stewart. Ms. Kenyatta Bowman.
Good evening, everyone. So I'll just continue where I left off in regards to my issue with the city of Pontiac. As an elected official and as a former employee of the city of Pontiac, I've served next to some of you and in a capacity served pretty much next to all of you sitting up there. I would like for us to come to a resolution with a discussion because I've already reached out to the current mayor in regards to everything that has happened as far as my wrongful termination as far as the foolery that went on with my employee documents. It continues to happen in this community where these positions are weaponized and used against people. It is not okay. As I stated, the EEOC, and I've submitted a document to the board, or I'm sorry, council, for you all to take a look at. And if anybody in the community would like to see it, the EEOC has granted me my right to sue the city of Pontiac. I would like to have a conversation with Council President Pro Tem and possibly the mayor to come to a resolution, a settlement resolution. But at the end of the day, weaponizing these elected positions is not okay. Mistreating someone who served the community and continues to serve the community, it's not okay. I will continue to speak on my behalf because nobody else will. How this city continues to thrive and dysfunction is not okay. If we cannot work together, we need to do something different. I'm allowing the opportunity for a conversation so we can come to a resolve because that has not happened. I have been mistreated by the former administration and the current administration. Let's fix it because it can go very bad. Let's not do that. I don't want to sue my city, but I will because I was mistreated. I was terminated unjustly. All of the dates and times and everything in this document, nothing lines up. I was told by Mayor Grimel, it's horrible and egregious for what happened to me. He shook my hand right in this room, but still yet under his administration, I was terminated. That is not okay. That is not how you treat people. And as you heard the message earlier, I was off on medical when I was terminated. You heard it. You heard it. I was off on medical, terminated. How is that possible? Let's fix it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. Ms. Carlton Jones. First I want to say Bridges and Martin, and she spoke very highly about a Pontiac company and what they're willing to give to our city. And I think if we really truly work hard to get more companies, and I'm not saying every company in Pontiac is perfect, but if we give more companies in Pontiac and people in Pontiac an opportunity to give back and make their city good, I believe you'll see more of that. So I appreciate you making those comments about this Pontiac business. I don't know them, but she indicated how willing they was trying to go overboard to give to Pontiac. I do want to say that I'm happy to announce that we have right now one of our camps going on. It's our career fitness camp. I indicated this to all the council people in the mayor's office, and I was glad to see I went to Councilman Parker's district meeting, and he distributed the information to people at his meeting, and they was very excited. We got a camp going on right now where we're actually developing some talent, and we got our next camp is going to be starting December 4th. Now, how does this tie in? I look right here on our information. We're going to have a career fair looking for talent. This is how we develop our own talent ahead of time. When we know we need talent, and I'm not talking about no starter jobs. If they're looking for inspectors, they're looking for anything, we can start developing our talent for whatever we need right now. And let me just tell you, the new way for us to look at Pontiac is not to downsize, is to upgrade the income. We've got young people who come out right now, being developed, choosing maybe not to go to college right away, and they're getting developed and can be making $40,000, $50,000, and $60,000 at 18 and 19 years old. It's a matter of how they focus their careers that it can be done. That is much higher than our average medium income. But if we don't develop it ahead of time, we talking about building a center. If we don't develop people to work on that ahead of time, we'll miss the boat. So all I'm saying right now, thankful that we got some sponsors. We actually are doing some career fitness camps where we get people ready for high-paying, high-demand positions. Clean energy, green energy is going to be a focal point along with construction. So I'm hoping that the other council people, really at the information that I share with you, that you will share, and if individuals are interested, my number is on there. And I speak for TDC, but that's just not Carlton. The people who are sponsoring this are parts of TDC. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Charlene Dyer.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council members. My name is Charlene Dwyer, and I'm the president of the Pontiac Creative Arts Center. I'm here to talk about some really positive things that are happening at the center. Let me start kind of by going a little bit backwards and reminding about what we've done this year. 3 days ago, we hosted the annual Oakland History Center auction, which was a wonderful collaboration between two nonprofits in Pontiac. Prior to that, we hosted an exhibit called La Mariposa, which celebrated Hispanic heritage artists and design. I'm really proud to say that 3 of the artists in that exhibit were Pontiac artists, and 2 of them had never exhibited in a gallery before, which is really kind of amazing. In June, we held our annual Kaleidoscope exhibit celebrating LGBTQ art and artists. And in February, we featured artist Bryant Tillman, who is a very celebrated Detroit artist who lives in the historic Brewster Douglas neighborhood where Diana Ross grew up. Beyond the exhibits and collaborations, the Pontiac Creative Arts Center worked this past school year with the Pontiac Youth Rec Department to hold experimental animation classes. We adapted a college-level curriculum to meet these 7 to 14-year-old Pontiac school children's minds. Also in conjunction with the Pontiac Youth Rec Department, we staffed the Art in the Park program. This program rivaled what Cranbrook schools were doing for their summer camps with color theory, drawing and painting, and cyanotype workshops, not to mention the giant bubbles. If you look on our Instagram pages, you'll see how much fun we had with all of that. What I really want to talk about tonight, and I hope I have enough time, is what we have coming up. Our next big event is December 2nd. We'll be participating in the Holiday Extravaganza event. From 12 to 3, you can ride the Polar Express trolley and stop at the Pontiac Creative Arts Center. We're located at 47 William Street, and we'll host an ornament making activity, provide Mexican hot chocolate and cookies from April's Famous Bakes. And we will have, this is all complimentary, but we will have some items in our gift shop for sale. 1 week after that, on Saturday, December 9th, we have our ugly sweater exhibit called Jingle. It's the Ugly Holiday Sweater Auction and Runway Show. It's an exhibit where the sweaters are the art. Our first Jingle exhibit was 2 years ago when our mayor was still just mayor-elect. From 6 to 10, we invite our mayor, along with everybody on City Council and everybody in this room, to be our honored guests. We hope that everybody can enjoy this annual fundraiser for the Creative Arts Center. In addition, we will have other clay club workshops and cyanotype holiday making workshops, and I see I'm out of time, but I want to just say, and finally, that we're honored to be a part of this community, and we hope to continue collaborating with the city and other nonprofits to continue making a name for ourselves, Pontiac, and the surrounding areas. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Pastor Kathy? Or Pastor Kathy? You pass, okay. Ms. Kristen Rose McGowan? Hannah Mathers? Or is it Mathers? Mathers, yep.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Hannah Mathers. I'm a Pontiac resident in District 5. I would like to share that, like you, I'm in grief with the Israeli people and the Jewish community about all lives lost on the attack on October 7th. I hold this as I speak today. We also must not look at this attack in a vacuum. Palestinians have been nonviolently resisting apartheid and occupation at the hands of the Israeli government for decades. Currently, Palestinians are facing what genocide scholars across the world are calling nothing short of just that, a genocide. It's important to note, as we learn from our Jewish friends around the world, claiming not in my name, fighting this violence worldwide, critiquing the state of Israel is not anti-Semitism. We are called to battle for our collective humanity right now. As of today morning, U.S.-sponsored Israeli bombs and weapons have killed 11,000 Palestinians since that attack on October 7th, 2/3 of them women and children. The World Health Organization says that a child dies in Gaza every 10 minutes. That means that during this 2-hour meeting alone, 12 children in Gaza would die. The UN has called Gaza a cemetery of children. As watchers from afar, whose tax dollars are funding this violence, we are at a battle for our souls. The United States is sponsoring a genocide. We should be sick to our stomachs and called to action. Let us all take action now. Pontiac city government asserted that they, quote, stand with Israel. Where's the action now, as the death count of Palestinians is nearly 10 times the amount as that day on October 7th? Let us ask ourselves, is this lack of action rooted in racism, in Islamophobia, in ignorance, in fear of being called an anti-Semite, or perhaps in loyalty to AIPAC dollars over human lives? I am perplexed by the choices, disappointed and angry. Firstly, we need to support an immediate ceasefire to stop the violence, the dehumanization of the Palestinian people, and therefore the degradation of us all. As a kid, while learning about the Holocaust, we were taught to ask ourselves, what would I have done when Jewish people were experiencing genocide at the hands of Nazis? Very literally, I consider now a chance to make that choice. I always imagined that I would be someone to, quote, hide and protect people in my house or refuse to salute Nazis, that I would stand against genocide and speak against dehumanization at all costs. Now is a chance. We as individuals, community groups, and you as government officials must choose humanity. I believe our ancestors are fighting alongside of us. I believe our future generations will thank us for any action we take that makes their living in peace possible. Don't forget that our current choice affects much more than this current moment. I leave you with the words of Rasha Abdulhad. Genocides begun do not have to be completed. The long genocide of the Palestinian people is both ongoing and not inevitable. We can refuse it. We must. Join me in refusing to aid and abet genocide. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Waterman.
I hadn't planned to say this, but given what was just said, I might say that I've always had the feeling that peace and respect for all humankind should be something that's desired throughout the world as we live together and as one humanity. I appreciated the comments about the mobile food vendors discussion that you had, and I did kind of something resonated when Councilman James said that it seemed like it was overkill. Particularly, I think what resonated with me is that some of the food vendors are kind of like the local flavor, and as these ordinances like that, sometimes they're technically great, but maybe they need to catch the flavor of what really is Pontiac. That was something also that resonated with me when we talked about consulting out our master plan. Master plan which needs to be redone, which we spent a lot of time in. 2014 when we completely rewrote it, but we did it. I wanted to bring in lots of stakeholders, people who lived in the city and citizens who knew what they want their community to look like, and not to just consult it out to somebody who was going to come back and bring something that was technologically perfect, but didn't have the flavor of our community. So I hope we're not just going to let the consultants go out and bring us something that's going to look very literate and technical, but not Pontiac. But I did also noted the postponement of the marijuana issue. Now, this has been going on in Pontiac for 5 years or longer, just trying to get this marijuana thing. And you said somebody's filed a referendum petitions. We've had so many closed sessions, and there's so many mysteries about this that I hope somebody will step up and give us some answers about some of this. For example, who wrote this referendum? If you're proud of that and you want to bring it to the city, why don't you come up and tell us who you are? The people who wrote the original referendum that passed by only one vote never identified themselves. We've had so many closed session meetings in which things are going on, negotiations, that people should have been part of these decisions. So it's questionable. But also, the $60 million lawsuit about the Glenwood Plaza people is still pending. The article in the Oakland Press, and we've had to find things by reading the Oakland Press, that it was 2 city elected officials who came and were contested the developer about his being involved in 2 projects, Crystal Lake and the marijuana. What do those 2 projects have together? And who are the 2 city officials who put us in that situation where we have a $60 million lawsuit? When are they going to stand up and tell us what that's all about? Just so many mysteries, and it's time for the people to share, to be shared and tell what's really going on in the city of Pontiac. I think that's fair. Spirit Pontiac is also the Facebook group that we launched. Some of these questions that people are asking about, you can share that information on the Facebook group.
Thank you. Christian Rose McGowan.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. My name is Kristen Rose McGowan. I'm a resident of Pontiac at 34 State Street. Across the country, citizens who want a ceasefire now in Gaza, at the bare minimum, are being ignored at the federal and state level. A groundswell grassroots movement calling for ceasefire now is now headed towards local city councils in order to be heard. When I appeal to my president, he ignores my call for a ceasefire now. When I appeal to my governor and state congresspeople, they ignore me too. So today I am asking my local city council to hear my voice and to stand up against genocide and pass a resolution in favor of ceasefire now. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Siembra Acosta?
Good evening. My name is Sara. I'm a resident living in District 2. I want to first open with words from a friend of mine and reflection on growing up intimately aware of the occupation in Palestine. They say, "The growing weeds between concrete remind me of a voice daring to speak. Today we stump our heels to the ground, oscillating left to right, shrugging our shoulders until we return to the land that keeps us fed. There is no such thing as funerals here. Not that we don't die, but that even then we gather and gather. In displacement we gather, in our camps we are already gathered, in exile we gather, in forced collective amnesia around our harvest and our oil, to sift, cook, tend, heal, share, gift, press, breathe, dip, make, birth, and part. For the past month, I have passed the Oak Hill Cemetery every day and thought about how now over 12,000 Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli government and their families. Not able to bury them, forced to leave their kin in graves just as deep as bomb impressions left behind. Almost 1 Israeli bomb per every death. More than half of them children and women. I go to work each day and wonder how to tend to the grief of young people in a city that announced they, quote, stand with Israel. How do I work with survivors of violence in a city that condones the atrocities done by the Israeli government and subsequent violence of our own? A city nestled between some of the wealthiest zip codes in Michigan, who push us out. How do I ask all of you, separated by us by this wall, to support in demanding a ceasefire if you do not already know that you should? Council people, I have to believe that if you saw what I've seen, the photos of limbs amongst the concrete, the pleas from children, the death toll that rises every day, the debate of whether or not to support an immediate ceasefire would not be up for discussion. Echoing the words of the opening prayer of this meeting, how can we be reminded of our humanity? Just yesterday, I read an article entitled, "How Many People Have to Die Before We Say It's a Genocide?" Because that is most certainly what is happening. It's been ongoing for over 70 years. Israel has committed crimes against humanity under international law that they have used against Palestinian people for collective punishment and for continued genocide. For many, this might be the first time people could locate Palestine on a map. It has allowed for this false sense of distance from what is happening. Allow me to bring it closer. Today, I'm asking you to support representatives from the city of Pontiac in demanding a ceasefire as the first step to holding Israel accountable for its crimes against humanity. Your silence is violence. It causes us to lose faith in your ability to speak for us as constituents, and we are paying attention. Lastly, I echo the words of a fellow organizer: free Palestine today, free Palestine tomorrow, and free Palestine every day until Palestine is free. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Meekum Ramsey.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to come to talk about Small Business Saturday that will be happening in our city as we have multiple events. So the first one, there will be 2 pop-ups in the city of Pontiac, one downtown, hosted by Councilwoman Melanie Rutherford, hosted by Mia Brooks and Chriselle Griffin, at the Strand Theater from 12 until 4. The next one will be hosted by Dondre Jeter at 374 Telegraph in the Big Lots Plaza on Telegraph, on Elizabeth Lake in Telegraph. And that will be from 4 until 6 on Friday. So we have one on Friday, one on Saturday. We are also working with Oakland County Main Street to do the Oakland County Gyms program, where brick and mortars can sign up and have people taking pictures from November 1st through November 25th and submitting their pictures online to be a part of a contest. In the city of Pontiac, along with T. Ramsey and Associates, Main Street Pontiac, Pontiac Community Foundation, are doing a passport program, which we are working with multiple businesses around the city to sign up for. And all it is to go and see the businesses, visit them, shop with them, and then get your passport stamped, and then enter into a contest as well. We're doing this to try to get people to see the businesses that are all over the city doing an amazing job. Thank you. I just wanted to say something about that food truck, food vendor. So Pontiac has had very little regulation, and now we're having a whole lot. And I think there are steps in between that we need to communicate with people. Because if I called people and told them about that, these chambers next week will be filled with angry people. People just need an opportunity to get themselves together before we go to 1,000, right? We're at 0. Let's not go to 1,000 without the steps in between, educating and over-communicating. And in government, there is no such thing as over-communication. Lastly, I support ceasefire. I was surprised when I saw that the city of Pontiac supported Israel because the city of Pontiac are multiple 60,000 plus people. And I think that we need to ask their opinions before we make a statement saying what the city does. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chuck Johnson. Ms. Darlene Clark.
Good afternoon, City of Pontiac, Darlene Clark. I know where to start it, but my heart says to start somewhere else. So in business, you can't mix your feelings with truth. In the world that I come from, there's no question that's a stupid question. And a lot of residents in Pontiac that I represent have a lot of questions. So I hope this can be answered at the end of your administration, at the end of this session. The first question is for Mayor Grimal. The former mayor, Deidre Waterman, seemed to come to the podium week after week for the last 2 years, and she's bringing attention to some of the things that she has instrumented in her administration that you proceed to move forward in your administration. Can you please let the public understand, it looks like, and they say if it looks like a duck, quack like a duck, are you two working together in trying to move forward on a certain cause? She seems to state that you hire her past administration, her past grant person, and it's actually confusing the public as to which one is telling the truth. Is she telling the truth, or Mayor, are you telling the truth? It's mixed emotions, so it's no disrespect. It's a question that needs to have clarity. Please put this to the public so they can understand your agenda a lot clearly. This is to the council. Council, you sit here and you represent the people. People all over, once again, is listening to this from all states outside of Michigan. You represent the people, but you don't hear the people. You have a council person who clearly last week stated that she was a hustler. She was is that the word she used, hustler? She's always been a hustler. Council people are not supposed to be hustlers. You have a council person that constantly, he leaves, and I understand that he can have personal issues, and that's fine. But how can he represent District 2 when he's not here to hear District 2 concerns? Then you have the other council people, and I'm not trying to label anyone, it's just clarity. Give the people clarity so the confusion and the mass hurt, anger, call it whatever you want to call it, manipulation, lies, it's all in politics game that the people are hearing all over. People in Florida, Chicago, Washington, they're hearing each one of your lies, each one of your truths, but straighten it out. We don't know what the former mayor today, Deidre Waterman, is the city mayor for Tim Grimal. We don't know if the council have heard anything that the people say. You have been here for 2 years. In 2 years, you have shown nothing but yes, yes, yes.
All right, thank you, Ms. Clark. Ms. Lori Miller.
I'm gonna get business out the way first. My first question, this is to the mayor or anyone on the council. I have some seniors, and I know OSHA at one point used to do this. Services for them. I have a neighbor, they're seniors, they need their grass done, they need little things done around the house. Is there any money, Mayor, anywhere, OSHA or anyone, that you guys maybe gonna offer a program for some of the seniors? I'm running into a lot of seniors with a lot of issues with that issue, if you can address that. Also, I want to ask the question in regards to item number, because I brought this up less than you. The original print shop, who owns it? Now, if I'm not mistaken, Jason Bauer owns that shop. And Mayor, you can speak to it, or anybody on the council feel brave enough to speak to that, because I believe that's who owned that shop. And Mr. Bauer, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me, Mayor, he worked on your campaign, you know him personally. And when you put the name Jason Bauer in, anybody Google it, you go to charges of, some mishandling with some votes and all that kind of stuff. So that's the person that's doing a great job for the city of Pontiac. Pontiac always get the leftovers. Now, I'm gonna say this. Those homes for 900 feet, 700 feet, I'm so glad, Council, you voted that down, which, like I said, I don't have much confidence anymore. After the last deal, I'm just here to speak to the people. But thank you for voting that down. Who wants that crap? You guys seem to think that we want anything. And when I stand up here to talk, I'm not talking about white, black. I love them all. They're all my people. They all live here within the city of Pontiac. And what I see is everything brought to us, already settled, already done, already planned out. And like I said, there's somebody in the street said they're going to make a tape for me for saying the Yes Council. They're going to do a tape on it, the Yes Council. That would be nice to see. because you guys all agree on everything and everything. Believe me not, these decisions that you're making today, it's going to come back to haunt a lot of us in the city of Pontiac. I can see it. I've been down here for so long. It's going to come back to haunt us because you're not doing your homework, because you're not talking with the people. You're working on your own emotions, your own side. I grew up on your side of town, Mike McGinnis. I told you this before. I run this street. I know all those streets over there. And I still know the people over there. Probably always will. And I believe that, people have been so hurt because we had so many pastors, that too. So many mayors that come in, they run on one agenda, and they come in and do another. And the last administration, she did the same thing. So some people think that I'm for her. I ain't for anybody that do wrong. She did wrong, and now this mayor is coming in, and he doing his own thing too. And we calling it out. And it just absolutely just really gets me. Every time I look on the agenda at home, what's on this agenda, what you think we deserve. Don't think very much of us, do you? Think we are complete dummies.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. That concludes public comment.
All right, we're at the two discussions. Very briefly, road improvements are planned for State Street as well as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard between Perry Street and M59. There's an informational meeting with details on the planned improvements Wednesday, November 15th from 3 to 6 p.m. at City Hall in the council chambers. I just wanted to make sure that we had highlighted that so that way community members that wish to attend would be able to. Mayor Brimel, anything further you'd like to expound upon?
Well, I do want to be a little more specific about what's being contemplated because I do want to make sure that residents have an opportunity to be heard. One of these items is a long overdue resurfacing project on Martin Luther King Boulevard from M59 to Perry Street. That stretch of Martin Luther King Boulevard has been in very bad shape for many, many years, so we're excited about the proposed kicking off of that project next year. The other project is a proposed resurfacing of State Street from Huron M59 up to Elizabeth Lake Road / Johnson Street, where there's a 3 or 4 way intersection there. That proposal, it not only would resurface State Street, but also would convert State Street from 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction, to 3 lanes, 1 lane in each direction, and a center turn lane. So I want to make sure that residents are aware of that proposal and have an opportunity to come out and be heard about that proposal. Obviously, the center turn lane can be an important safety improvement because a lot of rear-end collisions happen when cars are stopped waiting to turn left from a through lane. This has been planned by the city for some years. This is part of the city's master plan. It would include not just a conversion of a 4-way street to a 3-lane street, again, 2 lanes in each direction, or 1 lane in each direction, and a middle turn lane. It would also include putting bike lanes in on State Street. So again, I want to make sure that residents are aware of what is contemplated for State Street and that residents have an opportunity to come out and be heard, whether they support the project, whether they're concerned about the project, whether they're against the project. I want to make sure people have an opportunity to have their questions answered. That is happening tomorrow, November 15th, from 3 to 6 p.m. here in the City Hall Council Chambers. So please come out, have your voice heard. If you're not able to make it tomorrow, please feel free to contact us here at the city, whether it's my office or city council members' offices. But we look forward to hearing from residents.
Any further discussion on that topic? Hearing no further discussion. The second discussion item is that Pontiac, our city of Pontiac, is launching our small business program. And with that launch, there's upcoming informational town halls. You can join to discuss the new program and learn more about the upcoming funding opportunities for technical assistance. Those informational meetings are Wednesday, November 29th from 8:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. here in the City Hall's Council Chambers. Friday, December 1st from 12 to 1:30 p.m. also here, and Wednesday, December 6th, from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at the Bowen Senior Center. For more information about the program, you can call 855-925-8696 or email grants@pontiac.mi.us or visit pontiac.mi.us/smallbusiness. Any further discussion? Mayor Grimo, anything further you'd like to expound upon?
I don't, but again, I will just emphasize, we want people to come out and learn more about the proposed small business assistance programming, and we want to hear from residents. So please join us on one of those 3 occasions to learn about the proposal and to voice your thoughts about the proposal.
Any further discussion from council members? All right, with that, we are at communications from City Council. We just wanted to flag for the community. The Art Experience has a gala fundraiser November 16th at the Strand Theater. At Pontiac's Little Art Theater on November 17th at 7 p.m., Dixon's Violin is performing live, and that's at the Platte in downtown Pontiac. On this Saturday, November 18th at 10 o'clock a.m. is the CNS Healthcare Turkey Distribution, free turkeys in coordination with the Oakland County Sheriff Department. This Saturday, November 18th. That starts at 10 a.m., but you can line up beginning at 9:45 a.m., and first come, first serve while supplies last, held in the City Hall parking lot. On that same day, later in the afternoon inside City Hall, Councilwoman Melanie Rutherford has the District 1 Coat Drive and Turkey Drive. Contact Councilwoman Rutherford for more information. The Center for Pontiac Entrepreneurship has an Entrepreneurship 301 course on writing a business plan November 18th as well as December 2nd. You can find out more by calling 248-246-6620 or visit centerforpontiac.com. You heard about the Small Business Saturday initiatives throughout Pontiac. I want to remind that that's the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Small Business Saturday is November 25th, and we encourage residents to shop local to support Pontiac's entrepreneurs. And District 1 has their community meeting from Councilwoman Rutherford on Saturday, November 25th at 3 p.m., held at the Alley Cat, 31 North Saginaw. District 2 has their next meeting on Monday, November 26th at 7 o'clock p.m., held at Golden Walsh Garden and Home at 559 Orchard Lake Road. All right, I'll leave it there. There are a few others that you can see in writing in the coming months. Mayor Grimo, your communications.
Thank you. First of all, we have renovations underway at Ruth Peterson Senior Center. That's been the case for a while. And a lot of improvements have been made there, especially, perhaps most importantly, with the restrooms, making them ADA accessible, which we're very excited about. That work has concluded there. But we are now in a new phase of work at the Ruth Peterson Senior Center that includes replacing all of the flooring. That's very important for several reasons, but there is a lot of sensitivity in terms of that work, in terms of some environmental precautions that need to be taken as part of removing the flooring. The end result will be spectacular because the flooring there has been old, is in disrepair, and is not the safest flooring to walk on, so we're looking forward to the end result. But in the meantime, the Ruth Peterson Senior Center is closed, and it will be closed for the next couple of weeks, and so we encourage people to use the Bowen Center in the meantime. All of the programming that's been offered at the Ruth Peterson Center is essentially offered at the Bowen Center. So we understand that this creates some inconvenience until that flooring work is done, but we believe the wait will be well worth it with having new flooring at the Ruth Peterson Center. Also want to announce, as I have at past meetings, that we have resumed on-street parking enforcement downtown. So again, this is designed to make sure that city residents who live downtown, that business employees who work downtown do not park all day long on the street, and that instead circulation is encouraged so that there is more convenient parking for visitors to downtown, those who actually patronize restaurants or do shopping downtown. So this is all about trying to make sure that there is more convenient parking available for visitors downtown. But I do just want to again announce that you will need to pay for parking downtown. It costs $1 an hour to park downtown, which is certainly a lot less expensive than some of our neighboring communities. But again, this is not about revenue generating. It's about making sure that cars are encouraged to circulate and not take up on-street parking all day long, making it less convenient for visitors to park. Also, want to make sure that people are aware of a Pontiac Career Fair that is coming up on Friday, December 1st from noon to 3 p.m., which will be held at 76 Williams Street. This will include information about city positions, including building inspector positions, a DPW director position, which is open, a code enforcement officer, economic development specialist, and other positions. So please, if you're interested in employment opportunities, including opportunities with the city, please come out to that December 1st job fair, career fair, from noon to 3 p.m. at 76 Williams Street. And then lastly, as I've mentioned at past city council meetings, we're really excited about this year's holiday extravaganza parade. That's going to be occurring Saturday, December 2nd. The parade steps off at 11 a.m., but we have two new events that day. One is a fun run, the quote, elf run, end quote, that will be kicking off at 8 a.m. that morning on December 2nd. And then we have a downtown winter festival following the parade from noon to 3 p.m. So please join us for all of those events. It promises to be a very fun day for all involved. Thanks.
All right, Mayor Granville, your closing comments.
I do not have any. I appreciate the opportunity, but in the interest of time, I'm going to pass.
All right. Deputy Mayor, welcome back. The wave is your closing comment. Very good. Deputy Clerk Starks. All right. We go to Councilmember Goodman.
So to handle business first, to the resident of District 3, I am working on the dumping concerns that are at the old Hat Kickers bar, and we'll continue to work with code enforcement to handle that. Personally, I stand with the Palestinian people. I do not side with genocide in any way, and that has been my position for a very long time. And I hold that position deeply, not only as a black man in the city, but as an activist, as an elected official, someone who holds leadership positions, someone who has only ever thought and heard about just freedom in general from the many progressive, anti-apartheid Jewish people that have surrounded me in my life, as well as the many Arabic and Muslim friends and family members of mine who exist all throughout Southeast Michigan. As a person whose closest friend immigrated to the United States from Lebanon because they were in danger on a regular basis because their epilepsy was so severe that the constantly bombed and occupied roads made it impossible for them to get to the hospital on a regular basis, and would only be able to make it when somehow, by the grace of God, the roads were clear. I personally absolutely do call for a ceasefire, and I say that in my personal positioning because, again, as a black person who has only heard about civil rights and has heard about apartheid in South Africa, there is no middle ground position besides hoping and asking that people who are being oppressed are not, that a stance is taken on behalf of the oppressed against the oppressor, which, in all of it, calling out anti-Semitism, calling out Islamophobia, calling out, again, what is just straight up oppression, considered genocide by so many different human rights organizations. the fact that there is an open-air prison that is being held, where the constant blockade, where the 50% of the people who live in Gaza are children, and what is happening is absolutely atrocious in so many different ways. And to what multiple residents have said, that the city took a public stance immediately without asking council or the residents on this issue, when it is something that is much larger than our city, that immediately took a side before all of the atrocities that have been happening for decades have unfolded, as well as ones that have unfolded since that day of what is terrorism. But the fact that we jumped into that is saddening. And I, again, stand with the people who are oppressed, because as a Black man who grounds himself in civil rights and in the thoughts of Black and brown people who have come before me, that is my position. And with that, I say good night.
Thank you. Councilwoman James, District 4.
I don't have any new information tonight. Thank you.
Councilman Parker, District 5.
Thank you, Brother President. First, I want to thank State Representative Carter and Uncle Jerry's for the well put together Veterans celebration earlier on the Saturday. It was very well put together, nice, good food, and it was good to be there. I was a little bit disappointed in all the veterans who did not come, but it was still a very good celebration. I want to thank Pastor Johnson of the All Saints Church for coming and giving our invocation. I want to remind District 5 of our December celebration on the 12th of December. It will be a celebration. Please come out and help us. Just come out and just celebrate. The further information will be developed as we get more information as to how we can put this on and get some good participation. We just want to thank, just remind the mayor about the issue as we talked about putting this downtown parking back into play, that we be mindful that there's a church down there, First Presbyterian Church, that has some parking issues that I think has been addressed through code enforcement and the Department of Public Safety, and we probably need to look at those so that they can make sure that they are parking, actually, that they're not being ticketed for parking on a space that they've been usually been able to park at for free. And I want to just let those who attended District 5 meeting, that the code enforcement issues that was addressed at that meeting, those people, the residents that you mentioned, have been ticketed, and we look for further improvement in those areas. And with that, I say good evening.
Thank you. President Pro Tem Carrington, District 6.
Thank you, President McGinnis. I'd like to say good evening to everyone, those here in the chamber as well as those online. I'd just like to send a kudos to code enforcement for what's been happening at the Glenwood Plaza. I know this has been an eyesore, deplorable sight ever since I moved here. It's been about 12 to 13 years. So again, in the last year and a half, I definitely thank the staff of tough-mindedness, as well as getting through the court system to finally get some owner to actually start upkeeping in this particular site. Also, I'd like to also thank you for Summit University. I see still a lot of things that still need to be done that hasn't been completed, and I don't want the administration to stop at this moment, as well as on Perry Road, where we still have some conditions that need to be dealt with. In our next grant cycle, I actually will be requesting more funds to be put so we can start taking care of some of these more sites a little more rapidly, and then trying to go at those particular owners to pay the costs. Again, thank you and good night.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm Mike McGinnis, representing District 7. I want to thank the many dozens of residents of the East Side who came out to our monthly district meeting. It was really great to have so much feedback, so much passion, so much input. And I really want to emphasize we spent a lot of time on a lot of different topics, including the nature of pothole patching and how we can make sure that we get those reported. And I just want to emphasize we're in the last few days of when hot patch is available from the patch plant, from the asphalt suppliers, and therefore for the city crews, the Department of Public Works crews, to do the hot patch. It is much more effective. It's not a forever solution, but it lasts a lot longer than the cold patch, which due to the weather will only be available for crews to do very short-term temporary patching, and then the freezing and the thawing and the ice pops that out. So if you know of a pothole or a new one is just formed, please, as soon as possible, report that to the city through your city council members, so that way we can get that in the rotation in these last few hours and last few days, if and when it's still an option. So I just really want to emphasize that, so that way we've got something that lasts through the winter a lot better. But again, thank you very much. It's an honor to represent Pontiac's East Side in my neighborhood and your respective neighborhoods. And thank you very much to everyone for your service to the city. And we all love our city and want to work to make it move forward. So thank you for everyone who invested time in that effort tonight and the week to come. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? It has been moved by Councilman Parker, seconded by Councilman Goodman. Hearing no discussion, roll call, Deputy Clerk Starks, and thank you for being with us tonight. Roll call and adjournment.
Parker?
Yes.
Carrington?
Yes.
Goodman?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes. All right, that motion carries. We stand adjourned at 9:01 p.m.